I forgot my booze. I'm just now realizing this. I'm gonna go get it during the break or something. How are people doing? Yes, we're starting with this. That's staying in. SK, keep the whole thing in. Don't cut a single thing. This is the raw material people want to hear.
This is the discussion people crave. The hard-hitting insights.
This is what people come to our channel for. Me complaining a little bit about not being caffeinated enough, and then us talking about the economic situation in rural 1980s Japan for 3.5 hours.
Indeed.
I fail to see the lack of appeal here. Hi. It's we're recording this in late August, and we're now doing the episode 3 talkback. Full disclosure, we just got back from a vacation, and before that we had finished recording a good handful of weeks before we left, so I am a good month and a half out of finishing this game personally. So Vivian's going to give me a little bit of leeway here on answering these questions for all y'all.
I hope you'll give me some leeway on asking them, because I am exactly as
it'll be fine. just roll with us, give us a little bit of benefit of the doubt here. Understand that we took some time for ourselves because we needed it, and also I have a new hole in the side of my head.
We're just gonna leave that unexplained.
It's perfectly reasonable. Anyway, since you're the one directing this, the talkback for episode 3, the one where Keiichi gets everything he wants and fucks it up anyway. What's the direction for this one?
Yeah, I think we're gonna start with a chance for you to just talk about your general 5-minute version of your take, your summary of what might be going on.
Gotcha.
We'll jump from there right into questions from viewers, because we have a lot of them and they're good, and I want to make sure we get around to them all. And then at the end, we can get into whatever I meant to ask that we don't touch on in the course of those discussions.
Sounds like a plan, Stan.
So, that being said, what happened in this arc? We've got murders with no bodies. We've got gas leaks. Yep. We've got a second Keiichi that the whole town agrees they saw.
Yep.
We've got Keiichi achieving enlightenment at long last.
So much going on in this chapter.
What happened?
So there's a bunch of different through lines in this chapter, and I feel like it was pretty straightforward up until the very end there. I do feel like a lot of the stuff we see with Satoko can be taken at face value. In fact, should. I think there's a strong enough point that Ryukishi's making about the inability of institutionalized care, or the not institutionalized care in the sense of putting people in the sense of these institutions that supposedly exist to help kids in abusive situations, and how they fall short of being able to actually help children in several real tangible ways. Trademark, have we mentioned that Ryukishi 07 used to be a social worker? But knock that off your bingo card. I think that's what the whole Satoko arc is essentially about. She is clearly someone who is struggling and in a very desperate situation. And I think the narrative does a great job of both showing that, how the systems that are supposed to help her are wholly unable to do so, and even her friend, and even that the solution that she needs isn't as simple as just taking her away from her father and putting her in care somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
It's very clear about the fact that doing that to someone takes them away from the other supports that they do have. That takes her away from Rena, from Miyo, and from Keiichi, from Rika. And while I don't want to be the one to sit here and do the calculus on it, it's not as simple as taking her away makes everything better.
Mm-hmm.
You've tangibly made a lot of things in her situation worse by removing the few supports she has. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Again, just to be clear, that's not to say leave kids in abusive situations. I hope our audience has enough grace to understand what I'm actually saying here. And I do think that despite all of the really spicy, ooh, is it not thing that R07 likes to do, I think that we can really take that at face value. That is actually happening.
Mm-hmm.
Despite the, and I think that's part of the point about it is, whether or not she's actually lied about it in the past, whether or not she's a little shit to the people around her now, or where it was in the past, that doesn't mean that she doesn't deserve to be in a safe and loving family right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important because it doesn't matter what she's done in the past or how she's acted the way. That doesn't change the fact that this is something every kid deserves, to grow up in a loving household. It's not a hard conclusion to come to, I feel. It's also, I think I think it goes into I really like the way it goes into like what her headspace would be to like put herself willingly in this situation. Like, what would it be for her to, and in the sense of, what would it be for her to think it's better for her to not get authorities involved, to let them believe that everything is still okay and that she's not being abused? As it seems to be that, at least on the surface, the narrative seems to be showing that she's, willingly lying to the authorities that come to check on her because she would rather stay there. Whether it's because she is truly waiting for Satoshi to come back, or if she's waiting, or if she just doesn't want to be removed from her friends, I do like that it very consistently highlights like what that has to be like for her.
Mm-hmm.
I also appreciate that it kind of highlights how its abuse is not always visible. Because again, like in the first couple arcs, I don't know that it's ever explicitly even hinted at. I don't know because by and large, Teppei isn't in the picture, right?
Yep.
I don't know if it's been a while, so I don't know if there are any other scenes that kind of allude to it in a way that doesn't really become clear until later, that like, oh, that's what that means. But by the time we get Keiichi gently patting her head and her screaming and reacting that way in the middle of the classroom, and Rena has to be the one to calm her down, I think that's pretty clear that again, not an expert, just kind of reading what we have here. I think that seems like a response to trauma and abuse.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that feels like. That's why someone would react like that. I also think it's particularly sinister that Shion at least seems to have this idea that Satoko is responsible for taking Satoshi away from her. That's like with the stuff of like how she's the cursed child and whatnot.
Yeah, huh.
Like see last chapter, I've already hard committed to the idea that Shion has been playing Miyo for a very long time in that chapter, including the parts where she's like talking about her being the cursed child. It seems that, and given that we now have confirmed that Satoshi was Shion's boyfriend for a while, I think that's pretty hard. I think that's pretty hard evidence that Shion seems to, on some level, hold Satoko accountable for Satoshi no longer being there. Which is awful. Absolutely awful. But, Shion's the fan favorite character, so she's going to be starring in the next episode, asterisk. Yes, we know. It's just really funny that the end of the episode is all like, get ready for the Shion episode, and is not the Shion episode coming up next. Yeah. What else happens in this chapter? So the first big through line is obviously Satoko and her home life, right? And how she kind of finds some found family with Keiichi, and how Rika encourages that, and how that seems like, oh, this is a positive thing, right? It demonstrably, that seems to be a positive thing in her life. Having Rika around is a positive thing in her life. Rika shouldn't have to be the adult for her, but she clearly is. But that also gives Satoko more space to kind of work through what it means to be a kid and how she wants to, gives her a chance to have her childhood and move her life forward. And that's good. Kids should have that opportunity. What else happens in this chapter?
Keiichi's perfect crime.
Keiichi's perfect crime. Like, I really like that whole mindset, because it's very powerful in the moment, But also when you stop to think about it, there are so many problems with it. Right? And it's clear that, and I think that's really, I don't know whether or not this was intentional, but I think it's a very clear highlight of a theme that keeps recurring in RO7 works. You can't neglect the heart. Keiichi has convinced himself that by jettisoning all emotion, he has found the way to do the perfect crime in a way that no one will be able to trace back, right? By not letting there be a beginning. But by neglecting any emotional value, he's turned an eye towards the very obvious thing that if someone goes missing on Watanagashi, the cops have to get involved. He's completely forgotten about all of these very easy to what's the word I want here? These reactions are easy to anticipate, right? Because he's not thinking emotionally at all. And even then, I love the very drawn out and gross, kind of exhausting depiction of what it actually takes to murder a person.
Mm-hmm.
The huge difference between the fantasy of, even if I don't care about getting caught, if I don't care about consequences, I can kill some, this person is constantly within 1,500 seconds of being dead.
Versus actually sweatily chasing him through the woods, beating him slowly to death, one baseball bat hit at a time for several minutes.
Right. And, sure, some of that could be chalked up to the fact that, he is attempting to leave no evidence, but which is not the same as just, I don't care about consequences, I can kill you within 1,500 seconds, right? But also kind of demonstrates the gap between that fantasy and what it actually takes to kill someone. Is it easier than one would think? Sure, I think that might be. Especially given Keiichi's what his experience is, it's almost distressing that he's able to get away with it, right? And I think leading up to that, I talked about how one of the reactions might just be the fact that, oh, he's able to do this and now can almost not believe that he was able to do it, and it feels wrong, right? Which I think might explain some of his reactions afterwards. But we also get the bits with Keiichi fucking suffering from success over here.
Absolutely, yeah.
Fumbling the bag harder than anyone has fumbled before. He got everything he wanted. His friends understood what he was doing and crafted him the perfect alibi, including Satoko, who I want to point out is already in an incredibly abusive situation. And even if you say it's all good now, I have killed your father, right? That's still an incredible amount of emotional toil to put someone through. Yeah. Right? I'm not going to pretend that even if you don't like the man or if he's actively abusive, that you're not going to have some reaction to him dying. Right? I don't think that's wrong to have. And not to mention, he makes Satoko go through all the emotional work of trying to help him out later on when he's having a fucking, break. Dragging her around in a towel. But yeah, I do think that Keiichi completely missing the part where his friends are also observant human beings who are able to be oh, this is what you're doing. This is the same thing that Satoshi did. Huh. Okay, we're all in on this. Don't you worry, buddy. We'll help, we'll get you. And then Rena trying to be Keiichi, you dumb motherfucker. You need to come talk to me. I think it's interesting during that scene that she thinks it's okay for him to go see Coach, which on some level makes me think that maybe Coach is a trusted adult for them. We'll talk about Coach later, I assume. There's a lot of things I don't know, but so I'll save that all for then. And then there's also the gas leak year. Oh wait, do we want to talk? Missing body. But no, missing body can be chalked up to them already knowing and helping him out and being like, we'll get an alibi for this fucker because he's gonna go try to kill someone messily, and if it goes the same it did last time, he's not gonna do a great job of it. So we gotta all pitch in and do our part here.
They've just got the shovel crew out waiting behind the next tree over for him to be done.
Yep. And of course, Miyo out here faking Tomatake's death. Got get you a man who will let you kill him for for faking more murders.
Faking?
Well, faking the supernatural aspect. The murder absolutely happened, but like the faking part of it.
I was gonna say he seems pretty dead.
No, he's dead.
That seems
Sorry,
fairly real.
You're right. I should have been clear about what part of the murder was being faked. It was not the fact that someone died. It was the supernatural parts of it leading up to it. And then gas leak.
Yep.
Gas
leak year.
Gas leak year. I think I said this while we were in the sode, but I don't buy the story that it was a volcanic thing. Like, I can absolutely believe that I feel like I'm repeating myself, but it's been like a month and a half, forgive me. I feel like I could absolutely believe the geological finds that Hinamizawa is in a caldera or something like that, that there is some reason to believe that there is like gaseous volcanic activity that happens in or around that area. But as like the report at the end points out, I don't think that was the cause of it. And I thought that before the reporter showed up, so it's not like I'm basing it entirely on that. But like, Keiichi is still alive for one thing. That isn't consistent with how the gas would have worked. I do think it's, my guess right now is that it is Rena using chemical weapons that are part of the decommissioned military bunker that is on the Sonozaki property, where they did all of that weird testing on human flesh, or whatever that actually was in reality. That's my guess, but I assume we'll get into that more later. Did I miss any big through lines through this chapter? It has been forever.
None leap to mind.
Teacher doesn't die. She disappears in the escape attempt, which is, you can't have Seal doing anything bad. Oh, and in the time since then, I have actually read the first half of the remake of Tsukihime that's come out. I've gotten all the way through Piece of Blue Glass Moon, not Bluegrass.
Moon. Oh
Bluegrass
my god,
Moon is different.
Piece of Bluegrass Moon. I need the fan fiction where they transplant Tsukihime into a West Virginia holler.
Anyway, and I enjoyed it. It was great. I can also see where the teacher gets her looks and her personality from. Maybe not like totally personality, but like the curry thing definitely feels a lot more spot on now that I've gone through Seal and Arcawade routes. That's not important for this, just thought I'd drop it in.
It's important.
It's important. And now I'm reading Fate's Day Night. That's fun.
Yeah.
How's that for getting us all caught up? Are we feeling caught up? Did I miss anything important?
I don't know. We'll find out when we go through questions, I suppose.
I'm assuming we'll go through questions and stuff. Sweet. We just got back from vacation, so I'm still kind of loopy and having fun.
Yeah.
Whee!
All right. Well, if we're going to questions, I think
Who are you, Comrade Questions?
No, but the folks on our Discord are.
Oh, shit. Okay.
I think here's a good place to start.
Yep. Hit me.
Cat Minister from Discord asks this. What needs to happen in these next chapters to properly confirm or deny your current theories?
Ooh, that's really good. So a lot of my active theories right now, I don't think we've talked heavily about this yet, but I think my big active theories are that Keiichi is Satoshi. Rena is responsible for for knowing how to use the weapons and for gassing the town, and doesn't want people to leave. Satoko really is just having her own terrible things going on and catching a stray. for most of this stuff. Shion seems to be in a position where she wants to take over Mion's life, or could be prodded into doing that. Under certain circumstances, right? What I'm looking for going forward is, I feel pretty good about the Shion Mion thing. Like, I feel like that's the only way to read that whole chapter and not come away confused. I could be totally wrong, but I feel like I'm absolutely in. I feel I came out of that chapter 2 with a theory. Rereading it only solidified it, and I feel like it explained a lot of things. I don't feel like that one's gonna get turned over, but maybe if we saw some unambiguous evidence of Mion perpetrating these things in the present day. Again, I'm not trying to discount what happened in the past, but I think it seems pretty clear that Shion is angling to and can be prodded in some situations to take over her sister's life. I really don't know what would prove or disprove that at this point. Because the theory is like in certain situations, right? That's not really helpful, but it's also, I think what'll be interesting is going back through chapter 1 and then seeing if knowing Shion's existence changes any of that. I haven't been back to reread chapter 1, and I'm not going to until after we finish the next chapter, until after we finish all the question arcs. So it'll be interesting to see if there are any scenes that don't make sense with them being able to switch with each other whenever, right? Interesting enough, Satoshi being Keiichi. I feel like this could be easily disproven if we see a photo of Keiichi, if we see Keiichi appear in the present day as a separate entity. If I feel like those are the couple of situations. If we have like some visual reason to be like, oh, you're not Keiichi. Then again, we don't know what Keiichi looks like, but you know, I've got ideas from like the couple of manga panels we've seen and whatnot.
Wait. I think I missed something. To say who's not Keiichi?
Satoshi.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because right now my belief is that Satoshi is Keiichi.
Okay.
So, in order to disprove that, we'd have to see something that very clearly delineates that these are two separate people. Not in the sense that they have different sets of memories of events, but in the sense that like Keiichi is not the result of the Satoshi forgetting stuff or being put in a stressful situation or something like that. So like if Satoshi again popped up in the present day.
I have a fun tangent on that though.
Okay.
What evidence would be good enough for you?
That's a great question.
So we have stuff like police reports that he's vanished.
That Satoshi has vanished?
Yeah. And everybody saying that he's gone.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think a problem
is that not conclusive?
Well, it says that he's gone and that he's vanished. That doesn't say anything about where he is right now. And given that Satoshi being Keiichi explains a lot more about Keiichi's state of mind, and like there is actual explanatory power to that, I would be more like, I feel like the bar for disproving that is higher than just hearsay. We would have to see like, oh, hey, it's Keiichi. Look, there he is. Or I mean, there's Satoshi. There he is. Go say hi, Keiichi. Hey, look, there's a whole bunch of witnesses to this scene.
Or it just seems interesting. Like, if I want to prove that you're not Abraham Lincoln, I don't need to see a body. I just know that Abraham Lincoln died some time ago.
That's true.
People say so.
But there's also...
So what makes this case different?
Because there's no explanatory power to you assuming that I am Abraham Lincoln.
There might be.
Okay, but there's not. The thing is that there is compelling explanatory power to the idea that Satoshi is Keiichi. Suddenly, a lot of that internal model and that internal dialogue of his, a lot of feeling that Satoshi is there with him, like he's following in his footsteps almost, like he feels his spirit, or like he can talk, like he's talking to him. A lot of Keiichi's habit of speaking to himself in the in the third person. Like, he needs to remember that, no, I'm Keiichi. A lot of people's assumption that, like, there's nothing weird about him being brother and sister with Satoko, or it's just there's so many things that feel that get nicely explained by this. That's why it's compelling. It's not just me asserting that, oh, it's just some, A is B when B has been dead for a while and they get nothing out of it. There is a lot of explanatory power to this. And if they aren't, then we also need to explain why all that stuff happens. So I disagree that it's just the same as saying I'm Abraham Lincoln.
Does a theory's having strong explanatory power change what evidence it takes to make it wrong?
I don't think it changes what evidence it takes to make it wrong. I think it changes what you value.
Okay.
Or how much weight you put on those things. Because, again, there is no serious reason to believe I am Abraham Lincoln. No one is arguing this. The theory it doesn't demonstrate or explain anything that we've observed. It's just you asserting a thing out of nowhere with no reason. Me asserting that Satoshi is Keiichi does explain things we've observed. It is a valid theory for why this might be happening that would produce some of these results. That makes it a little bit... I do feel like that makes it harder to just dismiss. And... I don't know. I feel like I'm talking myself in circles, but that really is the thrust of it. So... And I don't think I'm wrong to assert that. I'm not trying to say that I could be wrong about this. I absolutely 100% could be wrong. And I guess we would see some of that if we also got more information about specifics of Keiichi's childhood, not just him conveniently yada-yadaing over some of the most important parts. But, so it goes. Other theories that could be confirmed or denied. What would it take for Rena? So I do think Rena is primarily motivated by her desire for nothing about the current way of life to change. She doesn't want her friends leaving, and she doesn't want her friends leaving Hinamizawa again. And she is willing to go so far as to kill them to ensure that doesn't happen. She would rather their dead bodies be here than having them living somewhere else. And I think in that she has found an ally in Shion for some cases. Like, it seemed like she was working with Shion to usurp Mion's life. Because that meant Mion would stay. And it also seems like she seems really desperate to kill Keiichi at the end of chapter 2. Like, he was the last one. Ha ha ha.
Wait. We're just jumping over a lot of things.
Oh yeah. I don't know, because we've discussed some of this before, so I don't want to repeat a whole bunch.
Okay.
We've discussed I think we've talked about how I think that it's Rena at the end of chapter 2 that tries to stab Keiichi.
Because Keiichi would mistake Rena for one of those two.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right.
I think I already made a convincing argument for that. I don't need to repeat. Okay, let me repeat it real quick here. Mion in that, or Shion, shows absolutely no reaction to the doll that Keiichi tries to hand her.
Mm-hmm.
Which, given how we know it is pivotal in both to both Shion and Mion in their reactions, at least some acknowledgement of that would go a long way. We also know that Shion and Mion are both dead by this point.
Do we?
Either they're dead or they've had someone convincingly fake their deaths for them so they can run back to Hinamizawa and stab Keiichi. And we don't really have a good reason to believe that. Mion's been dead in the pit for a while, and Shion died several hours ago at her hotel.
I don't believe that is established.
Pretty sure it is.
I would. Well, I won't get too much back into episode 2, but I would encourage a rewatch or reread of that segment because
I am going to rewatch the segment after. But I was pretty sure that like part of why Oishi was so annoyed by it was that like it couldn't have been Shion because Shion supposedly died several hours ago. But moving along, so I think in order for there to be proof that Rena is not acting with this modus operandi, I think we would need to see a bit more of like her during her murderous bits. We don't get to see a lot of Rena when she's not moitering folk, or when she's moitering folks. I do think she'd be moitering.
Who has she been murdering?
I'm gonna go ahead and say that she killed Rika.
Interesting.
Yeah, in this chapter. I already said that she's the one that gassed the town. I think she's the one that gasses the town. I think she stabs Keiichi at the end of chapter 2. I think in chapter 1 she was trying to bring Keiichi in on the fold. I think that one she hadn't been about to murder him. But yeah, she does some murders. She does some murders. What I need to see for that to be proved or disproven. For that to be disproven, I would need to see. I think we would need a little bit more explanation for how Rena thinks the way she does. Right now, like, I'm just extrapolating this based on her actions and like what we've got, but we don't have anything self-reported from her about what she wants. I think there are circumstances under which she would open up to Keiichi. It seemed like she was ready to open up to him at the end of chapter 1. It's just Keiichi has consistent bag fumbling syndrome and can't seem to let good be good enough be good. Good be good enough. Whatever. Does that answer that question?
I think so. Unless I feel like I got other theories you want to.
Many other theories I want. Is Miyo? I feel like Miyo has gotten more and more suspicious. Like, I feel like we've only gotten more and more evidence that Miyo is indeed fabricating her own death and staging Tomatake's death. I think we would have to see some very compelling evidence, like, no, here is how Tomatake dies. It's consistent. It's been consistent in every route so far that Tomatake has died in the same way at the same time, and that Miyo has quote unquote died at the same way and at the same time. It really feels like that is a plan that she has set in motion. So it would take some pretty serious evidence. Yeah, I would have to see evidence that that was someone else's plan. That she was either being coerced or working with someone, because I don't think there's any version of that comes out with her being completely innocent. I think at best you could say she was coerced. I think that's the best she can hope for right now. But that's the big theories.
Alrighty. Well, let's talk a little bit about some specific theories then.
Oh, I love specifics.
So,
it's the biggest ocean.
Yes, the specific is the biggest ocean. Thank you. So, I lost the question. This was right here.
Well, that's unhelpful.
It was right here.
Sorry, audience.
From Artificial Devil on Discord. I guess this is the obvious one, but what the hell do you think Miyo is up to?
Okay. That's a great question. I think...
Jumping immediately off what you just talked about.
Yeah. I think... Earlier in the series, I was willing to believe that Miyo was kind of a dispassionate observer who desperately wanted the folklore around Hinamizawa to be true, but because she wanted it to be true in the way that she was an observer, that precluded her from putting her finger on the scale and making it happen herself. As the chapter, now at the end of chapter 3, I feel like it's impossible to ignore the fact that she is actively doing this. So her motivation is not that she is a folklorist or an observer who desperately wants this to be true, but has to remain neutral in that. She is someone who wants this to be true and will work to make it happen. I think, and I don't know what motivates her to do that at the moment. She could just be a creepy story lady who finds it enjoyable that, weird folkloric stuff like this happens and doesn't want to see it disappear from the world. Her doing this kind of implies that she would know that the killings are slated not to continue this year unless she makes it happen, which is a weird thing for her to know. Because why else would she feel motivated to get in there and set all this up and make sure that someone does die this year unless she was certain that it wasn't going to continue? I guess what I really want with her is I want to know why she wants this to continue so badly.
Yeah, what the heck could the motive possibly be, no matter what the situation? What she got out of this?
At least in the first situation, there's a version where she is just a scholar with skewed priorities, right? Where she is just someone who really wants this folklore to be true because this is what she studies and what she's interested in, but has to accept a kind of neutral stance on it at the end of the day, where she's willing to admit that no, this isn't happening anymore. No, she wants this stuff to continue. And it's hard to think of a reason for that. I guess in the abstract, we can think of abstract reasons for it, right? Maybe the killings continuing allows how do we put this? I think she said this herself at one point, or someone in the game mentioned this. If the killings stop, then it just becomes actions of man. Right? As long as the killings continue, they continue to be supernatural. But the moment they stop, all that is left are men and their actions. So maybe Miyo herself has something to hide, and the only way she can continue to hide it convincingly is by ensuring that these killings continue. I don't know what that would be, but, and again, this is just completely in the abstract. Like, this is just a cold read, like without any real oomph behind it. But I think it's clear that she is taking steps to perpetuate this. And that without any other information, that would be a reason why. Maybe she gets her rocks off on scary stuff happening. She seems to like telling irresponsible, scary stories to children. Like,
that still seems like not quite enough motive, right? You could just watch a horror movie, Dad.
No, it has to do it to real kids. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Like, I don't know. You're right. It doesn't seem as strong of a motive. I do think if we're not willing to accept that maybe her motives are just she has a personal fixation on this happening and wants it to happen because that's it, then I think the best thing we have is that she wants the killings to continue because if they continue, then something continues to be swept under the rug.
Fair enough.
We may not know what that is yet, or how. We can take some guesses. Maybe it's connected to the dam wars. Maybe it's connected to some of the stuff that happened during the what is the story that Shion tells about the canned flesh incident during World War II and what I assume is the bunker that was used for those studies that is now on Sonozaki property. And that could be another thing she wants caught up. I think it's important that we don't really know what her relationship is to any of these other people. she seems to be working, or at least on okay terms with Shion, even if she's willing to like prick and prod Shion at times. She's not above giving Shion scary stories, but Shion clearly talks with her, has a relationship with her, and gives her the time of day.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if Shion's like her kind of entrance into the Sonozaki family. I don't know what Shion gets out of that, other than maybe some more claim to legitimacy of being the head of the family. But, you know, thoughts. I still feel like we need to know what Miyo gets out of this. Other than... And in order to do that, I think we need to know what her personal stake is in it. I have no idea what her personal stake is right now.
Medium rare.
That's it. That's her personal stake. That answer that question? I feel like
I think so.
All right.
Let's talk a little bit about someone we haven't touched on that much so far.
Sure.
Bea Gremlin 69 from YouTube.
Nice.
Which is a very fun name to say.
Nice.
Has this to ask. Irie, for the most part, seems to be a relatively well-meaning bystander. What do you think may have been the cause of his suicide? And do you think he had any larger part to play in the plot?
Almost assuredly. I feel like, however, I feel like his is also the one that is hardest to pick apart with the information we have. I feel like we've got, because he's so cleanly avoided coming up in any explicit manner in the first 2 chapters. But then all of a sudden he shows up in chapter 3 and everyone's like, hey, it's Irie, you know? The guy. There are some, like, you could make some askance assumptions that maybe he's the doctor being referred to in chapter 1, which would put him in the same kind of cahoots as Shion and Rena and that crowd. It might explain why he commits suicide afterwards, because maybe he feels like things have gone wrong at that point, or he knows what's about to happen and would rather die that way than by gassing. I don't know. I feel like he is involved in one conspiracy or another. I don't feel like he's involved. And if I had to choose, I don't feel like he's involved in the conspiracy that produced the original killings. I feel like he is involved in the conspiracy to continue them this year.
Okay.
It feels like there was the original killings and were one conspiracy. And then Satoshi killing his mother was a separate thing that took advantage of the day. And then the actions this year are another faction as well. I think that's important to highlight that we've got several different in groups of incentive to keep these killings going. But yeah, just cold read on what we have right now. I'm guessing that Coach is in on the faction that is continuing the killings this year, but possibly unrelated to the killings in previous years.
Why do you think he offed himself?
Either he knew that the town was about to be gassed and he was about to die from that anyway, or
he could leave. It happened a little while in advance.
I don't know. I don't think that you do something like that and expect to end with you being alive.
Oh, so are you suggesting that he is also involved with gassing the town?
I think that's the thing, is that I don't know. I don't know if Rena gassing the town was something she did on her own or was part of the plan. It doesn't seem to be part of the plan because it doesn't happen in other timelines. We see explicitly in episode 2 that time goes much further in the future. She winds up stabbing Keiichi, stibbity stab, but that no town-wide gassing occurs. It's also another good reason why it's probably not inevitable geological actions happening, and instead caused by man. But either that, or maybe he felt responsible somehow. Maybe I'm gonna be honest. His actions feel really inscrutable to me. We know very little about what drives him. He wants what's best for Satoko, but killing Teppei feels like that would have been what he wanted. He seemed genuinely moved after Keiichi explained in in detail how he did it. But was that an act just to get Keiichi to calm down enough to, put him on the table? Like, apparently not. The police went out and checked it. He thought the story was credible enough. I feel like if it was suicide and not staged to look like suicide, I feel like it's got to be guilt over something. But I don't know how involved he was. It's total guess, like a guess that he is the aforementioned doctor in chapter 1, that he is part of the conspiracy to keep the murders continuing this year. But if that's the case, things went as planned, so why that, right? Maybe he just was planning on the Tomitake death and not Teppei's death. Teppei was like, hey, you come over and play poker sometimes, all right? Maybe he did have another reason to want Teppei alive. It's weird that Teppei was still alive, given that he was apparently killing people, apparently had killed a woman before coming there.
Wait, what?
I'm hard guess that Teppei was the reason behind the death in that was dredged out of the in the very opening scene.
His partner's death?
His partner's death. Like, that seems like it was Teppei. Has a history of abuse. That really feels like it was him. But also he's got connections to the S group, so maybe there's a reason they can't touch him. There's a whole lot of stuff up in the air with that guy. But that's on Teppei. Yeah. Maybe there are some more subtle things about Coach that have been hinted at that I haven't been able to pick up on. Maybe I'll catch some things on rewatch. But I am seriously struggling to put more than just the most speculative pieces together with him. Aside from asserting that he seems to be involved with the conspiracy to make the murder happen this year of Tomitake, I got nothing else. His is the clinic that they get the dental records for that confirm that Miyo's, air quotes, body is hers.
Wait,
right?
Is it? I thought it was from somewhere that would have dental records, so not his medical clinic.
Oh, maybe I'm wrong then. Either way, it's just I got very little on Coach. I am looking forward to doing on my reread, seeing what else I can tease out about him, because he is probably the biggest question mark in this case right now. Also, like, he just needs to chill. Like, dude, fucking chill. You don't need to tell me about how soft and silky kids' skin is. That's
You really don't.
You really don't, guy.
You don't.
You don't. Ugh. Anyway, what's next on the docket?
Let's dig in a little bit on Satoshi as our next character to talk about theories. So we got a couple questions here. First of these is from Lulu on Discord, who asks, just doing a wellness check on the Rena equals post-transition Satoshi theory. You doing good? Need some water or anything?
Listen. Just because Rena is demonstrably not Satoshi post-transition, and I have to give up on this theory, doesn't mean that we've lost Trans Rena theory. Here's how Trans Rena theory can still win. No, I feel like a lot of that was us coming from Umineko and feeling like the exploration of gender in this game was leading to something and not just weird shonenisms. I still am holding out beyond hope that the exploration of gender is actually going to go to something, but judging from people's comments about it in both YouTube and Discord, I shouldn't be getting my hopes up for that kind of thing in this game. Which, whatever. It is what it is. Can't win them all. But you can still headcanon it. Nothing disconfirming it, right? So, yeah. I don't think it any more... Given that it seems pretty damn plausible that Keiichi is Satoshi at this point. Unless Keiichi is also Rena. Hold on. It's all coming together.
All right. So on Satoshi, Artificial Devil from Discord asks, what do you think happens to Satoshi?
That's a great question, because under my theory right now, Satoshi is Keiichi. And how does that happen?
Yeah, we end up with a different life story. We end up with everybody, nobody's saying, hey, that's Satoshi. We end up with police records that say he vanished, he withdrew a bunch of money and ran away.
Yep. And I think
he doesn't seem to have memories of this stuff.
And I think some of this comes back to his relationship with Shion. We've seen that the Sonozakis can get the town to work on a dime if they need to. They can coordinate everyone to go out and do a search thing. Mion's got the whole phone list memorized in her head. She can get everyone on the same page. I think part of Keiichi being Keiichi is Satoshi's reaction to having done what he did. Maybe he has a complete break of personality and winds up compartmentalizing so heavily that he becomes effectively a new person. I think upon discovering that, Shion could use the resources of the S group to create the situation where, yeah, Satoshi's life is over. He's gone, disappeared from town for a while. And maybe, a couple months later, some new guy named Keiichi comes up, but she's already talked to everyone in town at this point and been like, this guy's Keiichi, it's not Satoshi. Don't you worry about it. And her motivation to do that would be that Satoshi was her boyfriend. She clearly cared a lot about it and is affected a lot by Keiichi now growing close to her sister instead. It also makes sense that no one questions stuff like when Keiichi says, oh, it's because I'm her brother. And then Coach is like, huh, yeah, I guess that's right, huh? I'm Satoko's brother. And it kind of explains how he fits so neatly into it. Explains why people don't want to talk to Keiichi specifically about it. It's less that they're hiding how Satoshi died. It's just the more they talk to him about it, the more they have to hide and the more convoluted the lie gets. The lie is easier to keep up if you just don't have to say anything in the first place. It also explains why the Maibaras are getting money from the Sonozakis at the end of Chapter 2. It's not because Keiichi got stabbed by their daughters, because the whole thing they asked them to do were like, hey, we're going to need you to take this kid in. Wound up going really, really badly. Also explains why Keiichi's stories of his past are very threadbare and full of holes and gaps in his recollection.
Are they notably?
Yeah, he skips over a whole lot of shit and doesn't like to talk. He talks very briefly about not having fun at school, but that's really about it. I admit that Keiichi being Satoshi means that those memories do have to be further examined. Mm-hmm. Either he's misremembering that it's his either he's misremembering the identity of his mother in those. I don't know if he actually says my mother, I don't know if he ever explicitly states oh, this is Miss Maibara. But I do admit that this theory means those scenes do have to be reevaluated for what they are actually showing us. That is probably the biggest hole in this at this point, is what that history, what his past that we've seen actually means. But I also don't feel like that's impossible to overcome. And I feel like the weight of how much it explains of his current disposition as someone who feels constantly of two minds, constantly in internal dialogue, talking to himself, comparing himself to Satoshi and both himself and people around him. I feel like that makes a lot more sense. kind of how I feel about Satoshi being Keiichi right now. Sucks that it's not Rena. That would have been awesome. There's a good mystery for you to write with that premise, so hop to it. Maybe a new Higurashi arc with Trans Keiichi. Trans Keiichi. They do so much with Keiichi's exploration of gender and what it means and like how it's performative and what it means for one to present this way and how one presenting this way is all it takes for the world to see you that way. And then for it to lead to absolutely nothing would be just the worst. If all of that for you to tell me like, oh, now we're just doing silly shonen stuff, I would feel so deflated after all that. It's all right, RO7, you get a pass.
Here's a little bit more to elaborate on with that then. If Keiichi is Satoshi, what does that mean for Satoko? Why would she be so concerned her brother isn't here?
It means that she's waiting for her brother to come back in the sense that she can't have a relationship with Keiichi like she could with Satoshi. While they might have a closer sibling-like relationship developed, there's always going to be that history with one of them together that Keiichi doesn't have. And waiting for Satoshi to come back, she's waiting fully for the person she remembers her brother to be to come back into her life. And while Keiichi is a brother-like figure who does want to be her friend and treat her well, he's still Keiichi. He doesn't have any of those memories of their time together, of growing up with one another, of those experiences they shared together. And so Keiichi is never going to be her brother in that way. So I think that's why Satoko still holds out hope that someday Keiichi will remember who he is.
Okay.
But of course, Keiichi not remembering is the only reason why any of this works. Because if Keiichi knew who he was, then Keiichi not knowing that he's Satoshi is the whole reason why he's able to so convincingly lie about who he is. He doesn't think he's lying. He thinks he's Keiichi Maibara. And don't ask me about how the mechanics of that work. I got no idea. I got no idea how or why that's the case.
Yeah, that was going to be the next thing I was going to ask. What would give someone a whole other life set of memories, identity, name, and everything, all of this perfectly coherent stuff?
Maybe some of it is... Perhaps some of it is like some kind of brain trauma in the past that we don't see. Maybe Keiichi had full retrograde amnesia at some point and had to be filled in on who he was. Oh shit, you don't remember anything. Okay, your name is Keiichi Maibara. These are your parents. This is what your life has been like. The fact that he still has some memories from that time is interesting because it implies that he still remembers some things, but those could also be like fed memories.
It'd also be puzzling if he had a traumatic event causing complete amnesia and a fabricated life story, and then it never came up.
Well, why would it? Why would it come up?
What
in what context would he bring that up?
Literally any time his past has been discussed. If you were asked your life story and the answer was, in fact, I have no memories up until a couple months ago, and someone told me it was like this, that would be pretty different than these are my memories.
Well, maybe it's because he feels like he's getting more and more into it and he's starting to remember things, whether or not that's actual memories or whether or not that's stuff he's filling in. It could be that he's moving past that part of his life and is trying to get back into it. Keiichi is not a narrator who's known for making great choices. Keiichi purposefully not mentioning this in his internal dialogue is something I could absolutely 100% believe.
Even so that we've already said something interesting there. We've said purposefully not mentioning it. So then we're going to a world where Keiichi, our narrator, is concealing something from us.
Yep. That is kind of the implication of what I just said, isn't it?
Yeah.
Huh. I don't know then if it's intentional on his part or maybe unconscious. Maybe it's just like he doesn't want to keep thinking about it because it's painful to him.
Mm-hmm.
But there definitely has to be some kind of mechanism in there
Yeah,
right under that theory.
It'd be pretty implausible if all of this wild stuff had happened in order to make this all go right, and simply through sheer coincidence, it never came up.
Yeah,
right?
I don't think it's all coincidence. I think it's maybe Keiichi gets amnesia, and then Shion takes advantage of the situation to bring about the identity of Keiichi. I do think, I mean, there has to be at least one step of coincidence in there, right? Like the whole thing happens in the first place. But I think it happened. I think a lot of it could then happen with the resources and dedication of the S group and his ex-girlfriend. But, you know, that's just a theory.
What other thing I'll pry on in this area?
Please do.
Is what about the police then? Like, why don't if Satoshi killed his mom, and that's what happened, why don't the police arrest him for it?
Well, because the S group seem to have their thumbs on a lot of the scales there, and for as much as Oishi wants to take them down, he does seem hamstrung by their influence. He has to go around the department's back in order to get stuff done, in order to observe the Sonozakis. It could be, well, the fact that he knows that Keiichi Maebara is Satoshi because he's got eyes to see, right?
Mm-hmm.
But is unable to do anything about it because there's paperwork saying he's Keiichi Maebara. The entire town insists he's Keiichi Maebara. So what is he to do, right? His superiors are insisting he's Keiichi Maebara. In order to, like, do that, he'd have to go behind their back. It explained why, despite seemingly having no criminal history, Keiichi is on his radar from day one. Right? He knows who Keiichi is walking into there, walking up, approaching him in all those situations, and has already done his, you know, and already has reasons to suspect him no matter what's going on. He's always the one Keiichi approaches, almost like he expects him to relapse and do something again. Like he's waiting for Keiichi to commit another crime so he can get him this time. Which I would absolutely believe. But yeah, that's what I think that's how that would shake out.
Interesting.
Like it could be that Oishi does 100% know, you know, you're pissing on my leg and telling me it's raining. But demonstrably with his the heads of his department and the entire town and even fabricated paperwork saying otherwise, he might not be in a position to do anything about it other than play along. He's 2 weeks from retirement. You know? He's going to go to that farm upstate, up in Hokkaido with his mom. Don't want to make waves.
So, how does this line up then with what we see in Chapter 2, where Oishi is very much willing and able to move in on the Sonozakis as soon as there is any instance, provably, of them not keeping their nose clean. As soon as there is a real crime, he is able and willing and definitely going to move in on them. Why wouldn't he in this case? Because there's a crime. Someone was murdered.
Yep.
And he knows.
But he knows, but him knowing is not enough. Remember, his boss keeps tossing back on him just acting on just suspicion.
Yeah, but that's acting on suspicion.
There's a difference, but with that, he has concrete evidence that will hold up in a court of law. He's got something he can show for it that the Sonozakis can no longer deny, that won't be able to crush and hide. I think the reason he can't move forward with Keiichi is because he lacks that.
Okay, so the theory is that in some way, Keiichi did pull off a perfect crime the first time. They don't have evidence to pin it on him. Is that it?
Right. Either they don't have evidence to pin it on him, or because he's not Satoshi, they can't pin it on him, even though...
I mean, that seems like a pretty easy one to work around.
Again, I'm putting a whole lot of stuff.
The person they are.
I'm putting a whole... Really?
Yeah.
He says he's Keiichi Maebara, and he absolutely believes it.
I can go out tomorrow and say that I'm not me, and
sure.
They can prove in a court of law that I am me.
Sure.
You
How?
can do that. all manner of ways. We
With
all
like
leave a
all
trail.
the paperwork?
We all leave a trail in paperwork, in finance.
All of the paperwork that's been
We all
edited by the
we have
Sonozakis.
DNA.
All of the
we have
people,
dental
character
records.
witnesses that say that he is Keiichi Maebara and not Satoshi. All of the people in his department insisting that it's Keiichi Maebara. The whole mechanism I have in this is the Sonozaki's influence on the police department.
Okay.
That is the hammer with which I'm hitting this nail.
Okay, so
that does require that solves all of those problems, no matter how far-fetched it might seem.
what about the other nails, like this paperwork you bring up, which is, if we're fabricating an identity.
Yep.
Now we're talking about something that's outside the scale of one podunk town and one police department. Does Keiichi have a birth certificate? Does he have
That's a great question.
registration in whatever their social security equivalent is over there?
We don't know. I would assume he does. Maybe some of the Yakuza, maybe some of the more national level Yakuza connections of the Sonozaki family might have taken care of that. Because we know that the Sonozakis are big fish in a small pond, but they do have connections to a larger, more national organization. I assume it wouldn't be a huge strain on resources for them to get papers created for this one kid.
Okay.
Especially if it's the kid that the granddaughter of one of these families fancies.
Fair enough. I have one more question in this area.
All right. I love questions.
From Bea Gremlin 69 on YouTube.
Nice.
Is there anyone you're absolutely sure isn't Satoshi? I think you can make a good case for Teppei is Satoshi and Shion is Satoshi, but I could also be persuaded by Chie is Satoshi or Kasai is Satoshi.
I can't tell if I'm being made fun of or if there are actual substantive cases for these. I think I'm being made fun of, which is fair. It's fair. You can make fun of me for this. I am pretty sure most people aren't Satoshi. I do want to point out, my operating theory has not been everyone is Satoshi until proven otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
My operating theory has been people are only Satoshi if doing so explains something.
Mm-hmm.
And while it was rickety, I did attempt to give some explaining power to Rena being Satoshi. I don't think there's any explaining power to any of these other people being Satoshi. I do think there's explaining power to Keiichi being Satoshi, though, which is why I'm there. But yes, get your yucks out. Hit me. I earned it. I expressed an opinion on the internet, so that entitles me to all of the talk back from all the silly implications of it. Come at me, hit me with what you will. No. Fair play, though. Fair play.
All right. Let's pivot a little bit from discussions of individual characters and their actions.
Sure.
And talk about some broader events.
I love broader events.
So, Lady Burncastle from Discord.
Yay! Hello,
asks,
Lady Burncastle.
Any thoughts on Chapter 3 pulling out the Great Hinamizawa Disaster? That kind of came out of nowhere, right? Suddenly, whoops, everyone dies in a gas leak, unlike the first 2 times around.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about that earlier.
I kind of glossed over it, but I do want to reemphasize the fact that it doesn't happen in the other 2 events means that it's not just an inevitable geological happening. It is something that is caused by man. And I think that's very important to point out. It's not just this happened to happen. It's a geologic thing, not like a weather event. That doesn't stop because someone got up on the wrong side of the bed that day. Unless you want to tell me that there's an active fracking operation in Hinamizawa. Then
it could be.
Hey, maybe. But yeah, it seems more likely than not that this was caused by people, which is why I think gas leak, right? Or chemical weapon.
And this is actually a good place to tangent into a question from Bea Gremlin 69 from YouTube again.
Nice.
Do you think the Great Hinamizawa Disaster... Oh, sorry. Do you think it happened in the previous arcs and we just didn't see it? Seems like no. So if not, what variables do you think could affect it?
Right. That's a great question. So, I already said this earlier, but it doesn't seem like it happened in other arcs. As we saw in Chapter 2, Chapter 2 went far on past the point that it would have occurred, and nothing happened. So, What you gonna do? So then, what variables affect it? I have kind of insisted that it was Rena. Because if we assume that it is a man-made thing, right, which it seems to be, then we have to figure out what the mechanism for them doing it is. Given the plot beats that have been set up with like the old military base and research on certain chemicals and stuff being done in the area.
Have there been plot beats set up about an old military base, or have we assumed this?
There were plots made up about in the Sonozaki history.
Yeah,
About the family getting into their wealth by buying out by selling the canned flesh product, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was the result of that. And given that they also have a incredibly well-maintained underground bunker,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's that strange of a leap to assume that was where it was done, and they came into ownership of it because they now own that land.
Where would they be getting people to process into?
I don't think they were
food
doing it
items?
anymore.
No, but I mean, like, where would they have been then, right? Like in mainland Japan, in the countryside, rather than.
Why? I mean, wouldn't you rather do it there than somewhere that's around a lot of people? Rather do it out in the countryside where no one's going to believe a couple of podunk farmers.
So that strikes me as exactly the opposite of what one would want to do, and also pretty opposite of like what in fact happened with horrible
why don't
human
we start this thread
experimentation.
over? Why don't we start this thread over? Because I think I might have missed what you were getting at.
Yeah, I think this is also a tangent that we can skip if you want. But it just struck me as interesting that it feels like we've kind of latched on this idea of
Yep.
There's a military base here.
Yep.
That I definitely don't think we have seen someone say yet.
No,
And
no
I'm
one has
curious
explicitly said that.
what would cause there to be one here rather than somewhere that, say, if you were doing human experimentation, you'd do it in your occupied territories on the subjects you're experimenting on.
That's a very
and
good point. That's a
if
very
you're
good point.
Starving, people are starving and you're processing the dead into food, you'd probably do that where the dead are rather than ship them back to Japan and process them and ship them somewhere else.
That's a very good point. Part of my insistence on this is that it provides a reason for why the Sonozaki bunker is the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't strike me as just something that a Yakuza family would create just to have. You don't need to dig out a whole bunker to have a warehouse somewhere where you torture people. You know what I mean? You're in the middle of the mountains. You could easily make a shack somewhere where no one else would be able to hear it and do whatever you need to do there. This implies a level of construction and a level of intent that goes beyond just the needs of a Yakuza organization. This feels like government money. Which is why I think, and some of it is just also conservation of detail. We've learned about this. We've learned that the canned flesh stuff is aware. The Sonozakis supposedly, by legend, got their money. It would make sense if this was the place, which I know is a weak reasoning, but that's where we're at right now. That's my reasoning for why that's there.
Okay.
I fully admit it's a little bit is just the narrative convenience of it, which is understandably weak reasoning. But if we do make that leap, then it makes a lot of other things about it make sense. Like why there would be access to chemical weapons that would allow for this kind of thing to happen. If Rena is indeed working with Shion, as the previous chapter seemed to imply, it would also seem that she's got access to Shion's bunker and stuff. Maybe she knows where they are and how to use them. And that would explain why the town is gassed in a way that gasses the town, but not the outskirts in a way that would have been consistent with volcanic activity. So yeah, it's a whole lot of like, this explains this, this explains this. I think it's convincing, but a lot of it is missing some critical grounding. As I will fully admit that.
Fair enough.
So I think the mechanism for this event comes back in some way to the historical use of the Sonozaki bunker. And if we think of who then would have access to it and then reason to do it, I think with my current understanding, Rena is the number one choice. She would have access to it through Shion, and she would have reason to because she doesn't want people to leave or things to change. And as I think her actions have shown, that means she would rather see her friends dead than leave and not be alive. Because it means they can't leave Hinamizawa. And what better way to freeze the whole town the way it is and not have things change than to kill everyone where they stand? Except for Chie-sensei. She just went missing.
She's fine somewhere.
She's fine somewhere because if she wasn't, the Type Moon wouldn't let us have this character.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about a different question then.
I love questions.
YSS362 from YouTube asks, do you think there was a way for Keiichi and the club to handle Satoko's situation within the boundaries of the law? What might you have done in his position?
Oh God, that's rough.
It is.
It's rough because I'm fucking like 33 years old. I want to say I have the answer for how to do this, and I don't. I have no idea how I would approach a situation like this. I grew up, I'm white, and I grew up relatively affluent and privileged. A lot of my interactions with systems like this, before I transitioned anyway, were largely based on the belief that they have your best interests at mind. And if you go to them, and if you go to these institutions with compelling evidence, the people there will want to help and make things right. And that's just not how the world works.
Yep.
That's just not at all how things work in the real world. Institutions are full of people like you and me who have their own things going on. And because these institutions are at the beck and call of capitalism and funding through our own government, they have their own twisted priorities and things that they are held accountable to. Given that, I don't want to go out here and give bad advice in case someone is listening to a 3.5-hour podcast about episode 3 of Higurashi no Naku Koro ni on a channel called 80% Relatable for advice of how to deal with child abuse. Don't. I don't have any good advice to give on this, okay? This is not a situation I've had personal experience with, which I feel grateful for, and I am not the person you should be going to for this. All of those caveats, now that we've gotten through all that stuff, I want to believe, part of me still wants to believe that there's a way to deal with this inside the confines of the law in Keiichi's situation, but I think that R07 has convincingly made the case in this admittedly fictional set of circumstances that institutions will not solve everything. Institutions are full of people, and they have their own limits and liabilities and what they can do. And in this purely fictional situation, again, I think R07 has demonstrated that there are things where the institutions cannot adequately solve a problem. I don't think anyone in this situation thinks that Satoko should be staying with her abusive uncle. But given the mechanisms that the institutions have to move, the levers they have to pull and the observations they're able to make, the only thing they can do is let things stay the way they are. And if you agree that that's not an adequate solution to the problem, then you have to agree that there exists no solution within the system itself that will adequately resolve this situation. Was that diplomatic enough? Did I?
Fair enough. I guess I'd press back a little, though.
Please do.
I'd press back on the idea that if the institutions functioning in the way that they do can't help, then there's nothing else we can do unless we're willing to go ahead and break laws and so on. I don't think that tracks.
You're right. I should say that it's not the case that there's nothing else you can do except break laws. The implication is there's nothing else you can do within the framework of institutions. There are still things you, as an individual, can do to support other people who need it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Keiichi, like, in a large way, Keiichi continuing to be a good friend to Satoko when she's around in school and checking up on her and making sure that she... Like, those are tangible things that do good for Satoko. Those are things that are not illegal, that he can still do, that do help and improve Satoko's state of being. I don't know that it's what one would call a perfect solution to the situation. I don't know, and again, I don't know what that would look like in this scenario. But it's not that institutions don't work, therefore you're without agency.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to come. It's if institutions don't work, therefore it's up to us to do what we can. Does that make more sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And that's where I'd come at it from too. There's lots of things one can do when institutions
80%
aren't doing
relatable,
enough.
not advocating murder. Just want to be super clear about that. Absolutely not advocating murder. This is not sarcasm. This is 100% legitimately my point of view. I do not advocate for murder.
Things like providing a strong support network for someone who is being abused. That's something that any human being can do and doesn't require the police or the law or an institution to be in place.
It just requires you to be a good friend, to go out there and help and provide for your friend when they need it.
Yeah. And to give them space if they're not ready yet, and be open when they are ready.
Right.
To accept help.
And that's something that as a person I've struggled with for a long time. I have solution brain.
Me too.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So when it comes to like people in my life having problems, my immediate go-to is to be like, all right, how do we solve this? How do we make this stop? How do we, we got resources, we can do this. How do we make this go away? That's not what's going to be helpful to people in a lot of situations. What you want to do is make sure you're listening to your friend and being there for them in the ways that they ask you to, and trying to make sure that they aren't left alone. Right. Was any of that helpful or an answer?
I think so.
I think some of that was helpful or an answer. Anyway, again, do not come to us for advice on how to deal with child abuse situations, please. We are not. This is not legal. This is not legal advice. However, we do want one piece of completely actionable advice from us. You ready for this? Drink more coffee.
Unless you're already drinking too much.
In which case, double down.
All right. What else to talk about? From ADL Bay 8500 on YouTube.
Yo!
SK overall seems to lean toward rejecting any supernatural motifs that the story repeats throughout the first 3 chapters, like hearing footsteps and the idea of being possessed by demons.
Yep.
Instead, possible medical or scientific devices such as paranoia or hallucinogenic drugs are often brought up to explain them. Has Chapter 3 swayed that view in any way, and how much, if at all, do the supernatural motifs contribute to your theorizing?
I think what's important about the supernatural motifs is not that they are literal explanations for what is going on. What's important about the supernatural motifs is that someone wants them to be the only explanation for what's going on. I think it's very important to look at them not as like, oh, a demon did it so I can stop thinking. The question to ask is, someone wants us to believe that a demon does this. Why? So it's not that I'm completely discounting the supernatural explanations as having no meaning or power. They do. Their power is in someone wants us to believe this. And if someone wants us to believe this, they must have a reason for it. And in trying to find what that reason is, we can get to the deeper truth of the scenario. I hope that's a bit more clear on it, because I at the end of the day, I don't believe that there is going to be a supernatural explanation for stuff in this story. I don't. But I do believe that R07 as an author is not putting in random bullcrap for no reason outside of, gender stuff. But and also not just on the metafictional level, on the level of stories exist for a reason, right? And if this story of of all these supernatural elements exists in this setting, it is only natural to ask why.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You can't neglect the heart. Heard that once somewhere.
All right. I just realized I forgot to jump into one from Artificial Devil when we were talking about Coach.
Yo! I keep saying yo like I know who anyone is. Just shouting out your names.
This one, the answer might just be no, but it was worth
all right
verbally stating.
Okay.
Based on Ryukishi's author's notes for the characters, do you have any theories on what Coach's purpose in the series is going to be?
It's been long enough. I forgot what all the specific author's notes were.
Yeah, me too.
So yeah, no. Sorry. Okay. It's been a good month and a half. I do not remember the specific author's notes. We did go through and I did add those to the episode. So if you haven't, check out the last episode of Arc 3. We do go back and look at the author's notes. Some of it, my understanding is that it is just author's notes from R07. Not, as we assumed at the time, notes from the author Frederica Bernkastel. Just some of it doesn't make sense as coming from a character in universe. But, I'm sorry. It's just been long enough that I don't. I will, however, take a look at it on rewatch.
All right. Let's go to some even more broad things.
Oh, great. Specificity sucks.
Lulu from Discord asks,
yo,
since by now we've seen it handle a couple different flavors of it, how do you feel about how Higurashi does horror?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think Higurashi does horror in a very deliberate. I think Higurashi uses. Let me start over. Higurashi uses horror and slasher tropes as ways to highlight the real horrors, which are other people in the society and the institutions that kind of hem us in. The real horror of this last chapter is not everyone in Hinamizawa dying. Obviously that's horrible, but as a reader, you find it harder to kind of oh, so many people have died. I can't it gets past the point where you can really feel it on that on that guttural level.
Mm-hmm.
The real gutturally horrifying moment of this chapter is when Keiichi goes to try to calm down Satoko, and she reacts to his touch with screaming. That is the most horrifying thing in this chapter.
It is pretty.
It's
pretty
not
terrifying.
And I think all of the heightened emotion of the horror of brutally killing another person in cold blood, the horror of waking up and realizing you are alone in a town, that's all there to kind of help give context to how horrible these specific but human things are. If you are having a horrific reaction to those events, you should be as equally horrified by how Satoko is being treated by her family, by Teppei. I think that's the real takeaway here. If you are horrified by the numerous uncounted bodies at the bottom of the Sonozaki well, you should be horrified by how the town has allowed Rika and Satoko to go on living by supporting one another when they are children. Right. I do think that I think that's the true purpose of the horror in Higurashi. It does. I think it's important that it does still work as a purely horror, like as a pure like slasher horror. It does still have those chops. The scene of Keiichi murdering Teppei is brutal and horrifying in how grounded it is. And I think if that horror grounding wasn't there, it wouldn't make the comparison work as well. I think it's important that those scenes of more straightforward horror still do work on their own merits. But I think their purpose is more to highlight the more mundane horrors that we kind of accept and gloss over in our day-to-day lives in comparison to those more fantastically horrible things.
Alrighty.
That's how I feel about it anyway. We'll see if that changes. We just got the Higurashi anime box set.
Oh yeah, we found it in a random tabletop gaming store
that had a whole section of used anime. Wonderful place. Lovely people. But we saw that you saw that behind the counter. It was like $6 for the whole box set of Higurashi season 1 on DVD. And all it took was an awkward conversation about no, really, I watch it for the sympathetic portrayal of the disenfranchised people left behind by Japan's modernization in 1980s, not the pubescent girls on the front wearing
bunnies,
Angel Mort uniforms. I swear.
The box art makes it look like it's going to be the worst harem shit. It looks like it's going to be terrible nonsense.
Right? It's, oh my God.
And it's like, I don't know how to explain that this isn't that.
Yeah.
But I promise it's not.
I'll post a picture of it on... I posted a picture of it on Co-Host. I'll try to make sure to remember to put one in the episode as well, so you can... don't worry, we're not watching it yet. I understand that the anime tells certain things in a different order, so we're not touching it until... Unlike with Umineko, we're not going to touch the anime until after we're done with at least the original arcs. Anyway.
All right. Some more questions, a related group here.
I like questions.
Lady Burncastle asks...
Yo!
From Discord, what do you think of the contrast between the 3 chapters? Their tone, way of developing things, etc.
Ooh. I feel like one of the things that chapter 1 did really well that hasn't been as present in later chapters was the feeling of the police procedural. Right? I think RO7 talked about this explicitly, about the feeling of like grounding the horrific supernatural events in like the dressing up of trying to understand it. Like I think he said it was a Blair Witch Project. Right? So it's also got kind of like where you just got someone, despite everything that's happening, people are still trying to document and understand it. It leaves a paper trail of people trying their best to reckon with what's happening to them. And as the chapters have gone on, that's been less and less apparent. We still get some outside details and stuff. That's still very much a point of it. Like the tips and the ancillary details all help to frame stuff, and stuff from like Miyo's notebook, or what we assume to be Miyo's notebook. But it's gotten less and less of that police procedural vibe as Oishi has become more clearly a figure that we cannot trust to have the best interests of the people at heart. Which I think is neat. Like it starts in a way and kind of deconstructs it, but that was like a little flavor of it I liked that has gone that has been less and less apparent. If anything, I feel like this last chapter was like the most grounded of all of them in a weird way. And it was so grounded that when you were presented with these surreal things happening, like you were almost left speechless, because like there's no even implied mysticism in things that I guess like if you believe Keiichi's story about having the power to kill, right? But even then, I don't think it's you find that very convincing while you're reading it. No one thinks that by just, snapping your fingers and wishing it that someone will die somewhere. But I think that the moment to moment bits of chapter 3 were just like so almost banal and grounded in what happens in them that it's like it feels almost like a refutation of the supernatural. It's just like, here's a whole bunch of stuff. Some of it feels inexplicable, but not because we can't tell you what's happening, because you don't know why things turned out this way. Whereas chapter 1 definitely felt like it went more, leaned a little bit more into the let's have some bits that feel like they are, like the only explanation could be supernatural, like Keiichi swinging around his bat at the door and whatnot. That evolution has been interesting. I also feel like there's been a slow development in like the spectacle of the horror. Like I feel like the spectacle of the horror has definitely been slowly ramping up over the series. Like stuff like Rika's body being displayed and torn apart by crows on the offering box at her shrine would have felt out of place in chapter 1, but definitely fits in with how things have gone up through chapter 3.
Yep.
I don't know what that means going forward, but I do know that, like, if the real horror, as I think, is meant to be found in what humans are doing to each other, and the horror of the fantastical is just the facade that we try to put over it, that I wouldn't be surprised if things kept being more and more grounded. Not to say that supernatural elements will go away entirely, but I think we'll start to see the supernatural elements for what they are, which is a facade over something else. Like, this is what is supernatural. We're still being shown this, but we also understand that this is being used as almost a smokescreen to mask the more banal horrors underneath it. All right, I'm back, and I got a yuzu ginger cider from Shacksberry Cider.
And I didn't.
You didn't. That's fine. I understand that, and I accept that fact. But I am going to keep trying to get the that enviable Shacksberry Cider sponsorship. Call us. I'm already drinking these. I will willingly shout you out on every episode if you pay me money.
Trying to cross over into influencer marketing, I see.
Influencer marketer for things that I'm already drinking and will already continue to drink. I refuse to change my habits.
Hey, water, call me.
If you want me to schlep for your product, it better be one that I'm already invested in using.
Can I get sponsored by the concept of a nice cup of oolong tea in the morning?
Ooh, that's good. I would like to get sponsored by having a weird crick in your neck after you sleep weird.
All right. So, back to the area. Of talking about the 3 chapters we've seen so far. Comparing them, so on. Lady Berncastle also asks, what do you think of the experience of having Keiichi as our point of view character / narrator for these 3 chapters?
It's so weird. Because, like, this is a serial, repetitive narrative, right? And at least in other works like that, with stuff like with other like time loop stories, with stuff like Steins Gate or ReZero, the drama in these stories comes from you being in the shoes of the character that's witnessing this, and them having the agency to see what's different each time the narrative happens, right? That's not the case, and it doesn't appear to be the case in this case. The case in this case is what I just said. Keiichi doesn't seem to be any the wiser for any of this, and it's unclear what it means that we're seeing this narrative over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Obviously, it just seemed to be kind of R07's raison d'etre, right? But beyond that, we don't know like why why it's being shown this way, what those different stories actually mean, or how they relate to one another, and what we're supposed to take out of it. Keiichi in particular is a great choice for a narrator of this because he's already like not that reliable. He like even if you don't think he's Satoshi, his view of the world is markedly different. He seems to be willing to. I remember asserting back in chapter 1 that he seems to be willfully ignorant of some things, or willfully choosing to ignore seeing some things or understand them. Even if that's not the case, like he's constantly in dialogue with himself internally, and constantly has to like reassert, "Oh no, come on, Keiichi Maibara, who is me?" He doesn't seem to be one for making good decisions, and he doesn't seem to be one who's, despite his confident statements otherwise, who has the full measure of events. As we see in chapter 3, he certainly doesn't have the full measure of what will be happening if he manages to kill Teppei. That makes him for a really interesting character to ride alongside as the viewpoint. He is not someone who generally has his shit together. And I wonder if, and the story would be different through the eyes of someone who's a bit more put together, a bit more like capable of themselves. I'm really looking forward to the Shion chapters because I think seeing the world from her view instead of Keiichi's is going to be really interesting, and like what, not because it'll give us some insight into her, although that is true, but in what the two of them see differently. What does Keiichi look like from the outside? What is Keiichi? We're used to writing in his head and taking all of his stuff for normal. What does he appear like to other people? Does he appear to be like angry and dangerous as he comes across at times, or is he just some goofy kid? Like it'll be really fascinating to see someone else's opinion on all these events. I assume that we're still getting the Shion chapter in EP 5, even if it's not going to be the 4th episode, like the game said. I assume we're still eventually getting the Shion chapter.
It's likely.
More likely than you think.
Do you remember what that's from?
No, what is it from?
Centipedes in my vagina? It's more likely than you think.
Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you too have centipedes in your vagina.
One more on comparing the arcs.
Yeah.
Boffle999 from Discord asks, how would you rank the 3 arcs you've played so far?
Rank in terms of what?
I don't know. It wasn't specified, so I guess you get to choose how you rank.
1, 3, 2.
All right.
Next question.
What scale did you use to rank them?
Next question. Did it ask me to tell what scale? No.
I'm asking a follow-on.
Okay. I don't know. It's hard for me to just rank stuff out of nowhere without a clear idea of like what I'm doing it on. I can mentally rate like music and books and stuff I read, stuff I listen to, but that's because I have a very clear idea in my own mind of what I like and like where on a scale that goes. I don't know that it's useful for anyone else.
What you like is a completely valid scale.
It's a valid scale, but I don't know that it's a helpful one. Let's
we
see.
can
If
be
I had to rank
unhelpful. We're
them,
allowed. It's our channel.
I feel like episode 1 might be the weakest. I think it's held up because it has a lot of necessary introductory stuff to go through. And it also, more than a lot of other chapters, feels the need to keep pandering to the shonen audience for a long, long time. You still get that shonen, like that school life pandering in some other episodes, but it definitely feels like it's not as heavily done as it is in chapter 1. I also feel like chapter 1 has the downside of you don't really have a great idea of what to make of everything yet. If you're coming into it just on its own and haven't come with like the expectations from Umineko like I have, I imagine it's pretty confusing at first. Not like unpleasant, but just like, what do I make of all this? What does all this actually mean? I also feel like it's a little bit less memorable than some of the other chapters. like like Keiichi having like slowly losing his grip on reality and coming to the point where he'll murder his friends is a very poignant arc, but it also takes forever to build up to that point in between bits of like, let's play card games. It's not to say that
shots fired at slice of life.
It's not to say that there isn't anything important in those scenes. Like, RO7 does make sure that those scenes, besides just being, slice of life fluff, do contain important inferences about character motivations and ideas for how to interpret events. But it's also not very interesting. IMHO. So I guess on that metric, Chapter 1 would probably be the weakest. I think Chapter 2 has a really... I think Chapter 2 is a little bit better in that it has, like, the big set-piece moment at the end of Keiichi being nailed to the St. John's Cross or whatever by Shion. And that is a great scene right at it definitely strikes with a lot more power than the scene... Like, the scene of Keiichi killing Miyo and Rena. Miyo asterisk and Rena at the end of Chapter 1. That is powerful, but it's also, we don't get to see a lot of it. We see the aftermath of it. And there is value in that disorientation, but it's definitely a lot less guttural. That whole scene of Shion rolling a fucking charisma save to explain away why it's okay that she murdered people, actually. And then building up to torturing Keiichi from it, that is more powerful, and we do get to see all of that happening. Damn. I do feel like a lot of the stuff in the chapter that leads up to it, the stuff playing around with, is Shion real or not? I think it's good that the story kind of drops that whole act really quickly. It's like, is it? Oh, nope, totally. There are two of them. Whoops. Because it's a lot more interesting to play a part with their dynamic than answer the question of, are there actually two of them? And then Chapter 3. I think Chapter 3 is the strongest of them so far. I think the whole arc of Keiichi reasoning through himself, and then talking himself into, is it okay to murder someone? And if so, how will I go about doing it? I think that is some of the most compelling writing in the game so far. Like, that is one of the, like, the whole thing, the whole 1500 second scene is one of the most gutturally gripping moments in this entire game. That's where you can really tell RO7's strengths as a writer, I feel. I'm not going to sit here and pretend to judge other people's writing, but I do feel like that moment, and then like the slow, messy slog of actually going about it,
taking a lot longer than 1500 seconds.
Yep. I do feel like all of that is just... And then the added surreality of him waking up to a town that's entirely dead. Like, that's great. That's some good fucking shit right there. I love it. Absolutely in favor of it. It's that piece of Rika's body being torn apart by crows.
You heard it here first. Bodies being torn apart by crows enthusiasts.
Again, I feel like our audience knows what I mean by that, but you know what? You know what? No, I'm not going to lean into that. I don't want that on the internet. I guess if you ask me to rank them, I do feel like they've been getting steadily better over time. Although that metric of better, I guess it depends on what you value. I do feel like both the writing, the characters, and like the overall emotional impact has gotten stronger and stronger as it goes on. But also, Chapter 3 has 2 full chapters of build up to stand atop that it doesn't need to do anymore. So it can skip some of the necessary setup and get to the parts that are good. So would Chapter 3 be as good without Chapter 1 or 2 before it? Yeah. But that's my thoughts.
Alrighty, good thoughts. We have 2 basically identical questions from Heath on Discord and ADL Bay 8500 on YouTube.
A hearty yo to you both.
So basically, what are your predictions for chapter 4? We know the name is Himatsubushi, the Killing Time chapter. We know it's an extra unplanned portion of the story. We were originally just going to have the 3 question arcs. So what do you expect? What's going to happen?
The Killing Time chapter. That's interesting because I don't think that it meant killing time in the sense of like just wasting time away.
It's killing time.
It's killing time. The fact that it's unplanned is interesting to me because it tells me that at least on some level, R07 thought this was enough for the quote unquote question arcs, whereas some people seem to fervently believe that no, there's no way this could possibly be enough. You know, the 4th arc is super important. Clearly, at least the intent was this is where it stopped, and then the quote unquote answer arcs began after that, like where they would be slowly putting stuff back together. I'm not sure how I feel about that. But I guess it doesn't really matter because we just take them as they come, right?
Yeah, we just accept what's put before us.
Don't put words in my mouth. Like, whether or not I feel like it's necessary, the fact is we do get one more question arc chapter. So that's cool. I think that's good because there are still so many things that I feel like that I haven't been able to even begin to approach figuring out yet. Whether or not that's necessary for a satisfying question arc is, up to debate. But I know going into the answer arcs, I would like to have a solid working theory for most of what's going on. That would make me feel satisfied. And I don't know that I could do that with just the 3 chapters we currently have. As for Killing Time chapter, I think this might be an explanation finally for why the serial narrative is happening. We like that seems to be what it's leaning towards, right? Like, I wonder if, because that's one of the biggest things we still have up in the air, is that we still don't know or don't have any real indication as to why the serial narrative is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And that's definitely one of the biggest unknowns left going into the answer. Like, if we stopped here and going into the answer arcs, I would just assume there's no fucking explanation, I guess. Obviously that's not the case, or I don't believe that's the case, but working with what we have right now, you would have to make some very, very gracious leaps in understanding in order to reach a conclusion.
Yep.
So given that the chapter is Killing Time, and given that it doesn't star Shion yet, I do have to imagine that this will probably be at least some explanation for why we're getting the serial narrative.
Who do you think it will star?
I mean, don't we already know who it stars?
Wait, do we?
I feel like I do because it shows on the Steam page when I downloaded it.
Oh, who shows up?
Rika.
Okay.
Is this the Rika chapter?
Who knows? It's a mystery.
It also feels weird that you wouldn't have a Rika chapter in the question arcs before calling the question arcs over and moving over to Shion's POV. Like, we had the Rena chapter, we had the Miyo chapter, which had very, very little Miyo in it. We had the Satoko chapter, which had very little Satoko in it. Why wouldn't we have a Rika chapter before moving on?
With very little Rika in it.
With very little Rika in it. Right? Because like that feels like such a glaring omission. Like, what would the reason for that be? I get why we wouldn't have a Keiichi chapter, because he's the POV character. We're in his shoes a lot. Maybe, it wouldn't quite make sense in the same way. But, like, the lack of a Rika chapter? That feels like an oversight, not... And if it wasn't an oversight originally, why? What makes Rika different from everyone else? That's my thought about that going forward.
Alrighty.
All right.
All right, let's do some fun stuff questions.
I love fun stuff.
So, Melis from Discord asks,
Yo.
Obviously this would make more sense to ask at the end of the series, but if you could write a Higurashi arc about anyone or anything, what would your scenario be like?
This question asks a lot of me because it implies that I have a good enough writing sensibility to do justice to a Higurashi arc, which, thank you. I'm going to take that for the implied compliment it is. Obviously, it would make more sense to do this kind of thing after the end so I can see what's all of it. I feel like a lot of what makes a Higurashi arc good right now is that it both expands on the motivations and situation of one character, and also elucidates a bit more of what's going on in the town. I feel like that's like the basis for a good Higurashi arc at this point, right? So I feel like if you want to write a good Higurashi arc, you need both a good character to focus on and a good part of the town that hasn't been thrown in the spotlight yet. So with what we have right now, I have a feeling Miyo is going to get her time in the spotlight later. So I don't want to like. If Miyo feels like either she's going to be the penultimate or the ultimate chapter, because like the way she's setting up, it feels like she's definitely going to have way more importance to the story than is immediately clear. So I would want to take like a side. Here's what I would do. I would write the Chie chapter because, because 7th expansion won't be able to because of Type Moon. But I'm not beholden to Type Moon in my depictions of their character Seal from Tsukihime. So I would write the I already forgot her name, Chie Sensei chapter, and I would have it focus on the education system in Hinamizawa, specifically how the Hinamizawa school feels like one that's built out of spite, and what that actually does measurably to the quality of education in the students. The fact that Keiichi is responsible more for teaching other kids than he is for having his own education is something that shouldn't go unremarked. Like, he should still be due a quality education as anyone else, but it's clear that the resources at that school don't make that possible. And I think a chapter exploring that would be, and then exploring Chie's motivations and like how she does her best to keep the school going despite the hand she's been dealt. Like, we all know, like, even today, teachers ain't paid shit. So it's not like there's a paucity of stuff to work with here. Again, I don't know specifically what her situation is. I feel it's pretty benign because of the Type Moon thing, but I feel like there could be a good chapter there to write. Kind of give me like season 4 The Wired vibes.
Yeah.
Like what do we expect of our education system? And how, like, what does it take to make it do right by the kids in it? How is it failing the kids that we are trying to teach right now? And what can we do about it with the resources we have? Yeah, that was a fun one. Alternate answer. Maibara Senior chapter, that's just him fucking off to go to fuck Comiket for a while.
You stole my answer. I was about to say that same thing. I want to see Mr. Maibara go to Comiket and just see all the stuff that's happening off camera when he's away from home, while his son is busy going out and doing murders and stuff. Maibara Senior doing femboy art. There we go. There's your wholesome chapter. What's the institution it ties into? The mass media, fan culture,
the otherness inherent in geek and nerd culture, and how that sense of alienation can lead towards a sense of resentment towards the major power structures. Also, the urbanism of it and the fact that this space can't exist in Hinamizawa. It's always somewhere else that he has to be for it. Right, exactly, because Hinamizawa doesn't have being a nerd in this time period does require a certain infrastructure to it. You have to have access to the places where people are gathering and trading their dojins, right? You have to have access to the movie theaters showing the geeky films. You have to have access to the game shops where people will gather for this kind of thing. And while there does seem to be some of that, it definitely feels like it's definitely lacking in Hinamizawa. How does one be a nerd in Hinamizawa without having the supporting community around it to enable that? There's a good chapter here. Yeah.
It's also funny because that's the thing we've been sort of thinking about, right? It's still true these days. There's lots of places where you don't have your friendly local gaming store. You don't have the record shops for the genres you like. You don't have the things to support a certain culture, so it just isn't there.
We should talk about this because this is a relevant time to bring it up. Part of our vacation was going around our state and seeing parts of it that we haven't seen before, since we live mostly in the same area. And one of the things we wanted to do was to hit all of the major friendly local game stores in the state. all the ones that we could based on the areas we were traveling to, and we saw a lot of them.
We did.
We saw a lot of friendly local game stores, a lot of bookstores, a lot of music stores in other areas around our state, and it certainly gave me appreciation for the things that we have here in the big city.
for certain values of big.
For certain values of big. But yeah, it's amazing in like some communities, despite how nice they are, just don't have that infrastructure. It's amazing how much having a friendly local game store enables the community to build around it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because by having that space for Magic game nights, for playing Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments, for having 40K events, enables people in the area to have those hobbies and interests in a way that you couldn't get if you were living in a smaller town that couldn't support that.
So there's also a fun contrast in some places between, like, you know, sometimes there are places that have the thing and it has great vibes, and sometimes there are places that have the thing and it has rancid vibes. But also, sometimes you've got towns that are, like, run down and then turn out to have hidden gems where there actually is a really strong community of people that care and are trying to build this culture in this space.
Yeah, yeah.
And then there's other places that are big, well-developed towns with a lot of people that have absolutely nothing.
No interest in supporting that culture whatsoever.
And so it just doesn't exist there, and people go somewhere else.
And that's one of the things I was really, really grateful to experience as we were. It's a weird thing to like zero in on while you're traveling around, but I mean that's what was important to us as we're traveling around our state, was we wanted to see what those communities look like in other places, and I think we did that successfully.
Yeah, I think there's a sociology PhD thesis in here, so steal this idea if you would like.
Yes.
The psychogeography of gaming culture in American communities.
Absolutely.
Like,
and if you do that, let us know. We don't need credit, but we do want to see it.
Yeah, because it sounds pretty dope.
Anyway, alternate Higurashi arc, that is Miyo trying to set up a gaming community based in at her friendly local game store, using her power as the Sonozaki heiress to turn it into the friendly local game store by force. As we see, she's willing to do. And like what like being a nerd in the 1980s geek community looks like in sort of rural Japan, because Okonomiya, right?
Yeah.
What is she doing? What events is she having? How is she fostering that community?
Time skip arc where she is the proprietor of the local game store, still the Yakuza
absolutely.
boss and so on. And it definitely has great vibes as a store in some ways, because, you know, if you keep showing up and not showering, you might be found in a shallow grave outside town somewhere. She can make that happen.
Okay, here's a freebie from us. If you're ever going to a local game store, just fucking shower. You should be showering anyway, but it's not hard to do. You'll feel better about yourself, and other people will feel better about sharing the space with you. That's a freebie. If you've gotten to your 30s and haven't figured that out yet, I'm glad we helped you.
I think my other Higurashi arc would be what's Hinamizawa look like in this time period if nothing goes wrong? We've each time had some of these like X factors pushing things out of balance, and everything careens into a pile of murder and awfulness. So, but like, what's it look like if that doesn't happen? We know there's all these fucking problems under the surface, and a lot of people are struggling and miserable. So what comes to the forefront if the murders aren't the issue of the day? What happens instead?
That's interesting to me, because I feel like the murders are a response to these things, right? That wouldn't get addressed otherwise. And I think a version of Hinamizawa that doesn't explode into this is a version of Hinamizawa that has successfully tramped down on its problems and prevented them from coming to light for another year. I think it's a Hinamizawa where things have been shut up and like kept closed successfully. And I don't know that that's a better Hinamizawa. But that's a fascinating arc as well. we'll have to see how many of these actually happen in part 2. I just know I'm right about the Chie arc.
All right, let's pivot a little. Malus from Discord asks,
Yo.
if you could meet Keiichi and talk to him, what would you say?
That's an interesting question because it assumes that Keiichi would want to listen to anything I have to say. Me being a 30-something-year-old white person
from all the way on the other side
from
of the
all the
globe.
way on the other side of the globe, who should have no idea what's going on in his life. Assuming we could get past all that. I think the one thing I would want to tell Keiichi is that you need to trust that your friends are your friends.
That's good.
Your friends are your friends for a reason. And if you do not trust that they are your friends, that they want to be your friends and that they have your best interests at heart, that second guessing yourself is only going to lead you down to worse and worse trains of thought. It's okay to not be sure of yourself, but when you're not sure of yourself, don't isolate yourself from those around you. Reach out to the friends who you've made who want to be there with you. They're your friends because they will help you, and they want to help you. I don't know. We all imagine Higurashi if I got to talk to Keiichi and it's like 20 pages. But I feel like that's maybe the best advice I could give him. Assuming we get past the whole, like, why are you listening to me? Why would I even know about this stuff? But yeah, just like, you have friends for a reason. Listen to them and use them. Don't isolate yourself because you're feeling unsure about things. You have a support network, make use of it.
That's a good one.
How about you? What would you say to Keiichi?
Invest in Apple and Nvidia stock. You'll thank me in 20 to 30 years.
I was literally going to say invest in Apple.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
aside from that, I'm trying to think of what I'd say that isn't the same as what you did. I guess that things tend to happen for reasons and to have explanations for why people act in ways, why events occur. And when it seems like everything is inexplicable and terrifying and impossible and nonsensical and horrible, doesn't necessarily mean it's about you. It doesn't necessarily mean there's something uniquely wrong in your life that's making everything go horribly to punish you in particular. There's probably other things going on that are making it the way it is, and you can probably, hopefully, find out a little more about that by trusting some of the other people who are trusting you and trying to do the things that eskay already talked about.
Kind of getting at his persistent protagonist syndrome. Right. And just kind of be like, the world doesn't revolve around you, kid, and it's better for that. You're better off for that.
A world where you are indeed the focal point is a terrifying world. You'd be right to be paranoid and freaked out by that. But what if this isn't that kind of world?
It's so funny because he is the protagonist, but he's the protagonist of a story, not the protagonist of his reality. And that difference is, I think, very important. So, Nietzsche from Discord follows up by asking, gonna follow that question with, what would you say to every club member if you met them? That's a great question. For Satoko, I'd be like, I think I would try offer her a hug and tell her things will get better and that she can rely on her friends. It's okay, Satoko. Because I just want Satoko to be happy. She's my little gremlin. I think mine for Satoko would be, it's not your fault. Ooh, yeah, something like that. Like it's not, you are not responsible for this, just to help internalize that. Like, it feels like she definitely does blame herself for some of it, which is why she's doing what appears to be penance to get her brother back. And it's like, this isn't your fault. What's happening to you is wrong, and you you are not at fault for it. And you can and do deserve better things. For Rika, I'd be like, here's a step-by-step guide of how to make your own moonshine. Get some extra cash under the table. You seem to have your shit together for some reason, so like, I don't know.
Here's how you can fund temple operations a little bit better.
Exactly. Here, let me get you in touch with one Reimu Hakure. I'm sure you could swap notes. I really don't know what I'd say to Rika.
Go, fight,
right? And
win.
Rika,
yay!
Yeah, right?
That's what.
Exactly.
That's
she
what I'd
seems
say.
like the one that has her shit together the most. She seems like the most adult out of any of them, which is a weird thing to say. But I think I would want to say something to her like, what you're doing is incredible and good and important, but it's not wrong to take time for yourself. Helping your friends and being there for them is incredibly important and a good thing to do, but don't forget that you are also a person who has your own needs, and that being able to take care of yourself is just as important as being able to take care of others.
Good one.
Invest in Apple.
Yeah, all of these come with that coda.
All of these come with the Invest in Apple rider. Oh man, I struggle to find sometimes to be like, what would I want to say that isn't just trite, you know?
Mhm.
But what would I say to Rena? Things will change, and that's okay. Just because the world changes doesn't mean that the time you spent with the people you love has gone away or is any less important. And learning to live with that is part of what it means to grow up. It's scary, but it's something that you can live through, and your friends will be there to help you. I get the feeling with Rena that a lot of this comes from, I don't know if I'm justified in this, but I feel like a lot of what I feel her motivation comes from a feeling of being scared.
Mm.
More than anything else, I feel like whatever happened at her old school did scare her. And that this sense of trying to make things don't change is her way of trying to wrest some kind of control back. And I feel like if she had someone just tell her that it's okay, things will change, and things are better off for that, and rather than trying to keep things the way they are, if you just spend your time with your friends and be there to support them, that's the best thing you can do. But I don't know, that relies on me having a correct read on her situation.
I feel like what I'd say to Rena is, have you discovered sad weird girl music yet? And if you haven't, how can I convince you to do so? Because it's valid to have feelings of anger and paranoia and even really abnormal feelings that are quite outside the norm of the people you're interacting with. But there's ways you can deal with that other than smashing all the windows at your school. Maybe throw on Swan's seminal first album or something.
Wasn't their first, what was it, Cop?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that. But this is kind of a trite version, but also really, like, there are other outlets for your otherness, whether that's in music and artistic expression. Lean into the bizarre, ugly, cute aesthetic.
Yeah,
express yourself in art, or whether that's through social connections with folks. Get into BBS culture once that's a thing in a couple years or so on. Connect
there you
with
go.
the other freaks out
there. You
there.
got the chance to be one of the old hats at the internet.
Yeah,
take
like
it.
There's ways to deal with scary feelings of otherness and difference, and darkness and so on, that are more constructive and don't end up with you hospitalized or in jail.
Woo!
Not that that's coming from anywhere.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Who
All
else?
right.
Who else we have? We have Mion still, and we have
Yeah. From Mion. Hey, here's a D&D 3.5 handbook.
that's not out yet. We'll have to start with first edition, right? What's the timeline look like here?
No, like I'm assuming that I bring it with me.
Oh,
or
okay,
whatever.
yeah.
Like, hey, Mion.
Okay, so shots fired. It's a judgment call that 3.5 is the edition she should learn.
Okay, so I'm just saying that because D and 3.5 was the one I started learning on, and it felt very inviting. Regardless, hey Mion, here's a D&D handbook. I think you'll find this really fun. Or, failing that, you want to learn how to play Commander?
Mion could have played D&D.
Yeah, she could have. Like, because
It would have to be first edition. AD&D second edition wasn't until 89.
yeah,
but
first edition D&D was out.
yeah.
I don't know if it was in Japan yet, but she could still find a way. Regardless, I think handing Mion a D&D source book is probably the best conversation we could have. Or if you want to be a serious answer, you are not your family. I think is an important thing to tell her.
Yeah, you're not identical with the weight other people put on your shoulders.
You are not what the Sonozaki family is. What you choose to do with your life is your own, and you have that freedom. And you shouldn't. Again, I feel like it feels weird because most of the Mion chapter wasn't Mion. But I still feel like the stuff where she felt like really proud of the Dam Wars and stuff and her involvement and like that felt like really Mion. Like she was proud to have been a part of that and thought that there was value in that, but maybe doesn't really see the value in as much in what her family has perpetuated since then. But and Shion, chill. Chill. Girl, what? I don't know what you got going on, but it's far more interesting than anything else that's happening, so fucking chill, okay? Oh, that's rude. I feel like I really don't have that great of a handle on Shion's deal yet. I feel like she is involved with the current conspiracy to continue the murders. And I feel like if my theory about Keiichi being Satoshi is incorrect, then I don't know what her motivation is. But
it might feel like the world is over when your middle school boyfriend breaks up with you, but in fact, you'll find on the scale of impactful events in your life, it's ultimately extremely far down there, as long as you don't let it guide you into, murder-based decisions.
Yeah. I feel like it's also one of those things that you can tell someone at that age and is hard to understand, like it, because at that time, like those relationships do feel all encompassing and world shattering when they end. But you have to understand that like that is your first, like for all of our fucking high schoolers watching this episode of 30-year-olds talking about a 20-year-old visual novel for 3.5 hours. You have to understand that like this is your first experience with these. They do feel powerful and pivotal because that is what the emotion of being that is what being emotionally involved with someone else feels like. And this is likely your first exposure to that. It's not wrong for them to feel important to you, because you should treat relationships with importance. Like another person is trusting you. That's not an invaluable thing that they are giving to you. But you shouldn't also confuse that with it being a once in a lifetime feeling.
Yep.
This is what relationships feel like. So this is what they will continue to feel like in the future. And you can use so don't, if you have a messy breakup in your high school, it's going to suck in the moment, but understand that that's not, that you will get over it and things will move on. People as adults have relationships all the time, and they have messy breakups and they have good breakups and good relationships, bad relationships. that stuff continues. And learning how to deal with those feelings successfully is part of what makes you good at having a successful relationship with someone.
And surprisingly, you don't need to have a murder basement to get through it.
You don't. That doesn't mean that your feelings are wrong or invalid.
Or that you can't have a murder basement for unrelated reasons.
Exactly. It just means that you need to, that you should try to understand the context that which these will come in. And again, that's hard to say because, I don't know if I would have believed you if you told me that when I was in high school. Right? Because it does feel, heavy, because it's nothing I had experienced before. But don't beat yourself up over it. Be a nice person, be open and be respectful in a relationship with other people, and even if they wind up messy, you'll learn something from it. It's high school, whatever. You're expected to fuck up. Fuck up while you can. Great. Now that we've finally played to all of our 14 to 18 demographic. The noted 14 to 18 demographic on the channel of... I've done this joke twice already. All right, moving on. What's next?
Lady Burncastle from Discord asks...
Yo!
Which serious ideas from Keiichi or some other character do you feel are the silliest to you? What's the silliest nonsense someone's brought up so far?
The idea that you could kill someone perfectly and not have a beginning. It's not to say that can't happen or that I don't understand why. But Keiichi's treating of it as if he knows everything, that all of the variables that are going to go into it from the get-go, and that he has perfect knowledge of the situation, is laughable. He is overlooking so many things that seem very simple just because he is in this headspace. But I don't know that he would be in a position to actually hear any of that if you tried to tell it to him. Also, the notion that the fucking stuff in the warehouse is ritual implement for dismembering stuff. I get that Miyo has her whole thing going on where she wants to perpetuate this lie, but girl, if the only people you can get to believe you are fucking frightened teenagers, you don't have a strong story. I'm just saying, it's telling that the only people that seem to be buying her snake oil are impressionable kids.
Personally, I'm a huge fan of Keiichi's near immediate leap to the idea that, these confusing events are happening around me. It must somehow all be about me and also my fault, and also I'm the agent acting in it. Therefore, when I think about someone, they die.
Right.
That's just... Hold up, buddy. Any step of this, we could have stopped at and talked about how it's wrong. But the combination of all of it ends up being something so beautifully out there that, you just gotta appreciate it.
Is Keiichi a self-hating narcissist?
Maybe.
He does demonstrably seem to think everything is about him, but also he doesn't seem that, he doesn't seem super happy with things, so...
On the flip side, in terms of people that think the world is happening all around them and that also aren't very happy with themselves and confused about themselves and their role in the world, that sounds like a description of what I was like as a teen.
Okay, yeah, sure, fine. Okay, that's fair. Maybe it's just teenagers.
You never know. On the other hand, he's clearly got a lot of wildly abnormal stuff going on. Most teenagers do not, in fact, go kill people.
Yes, most teenagers are... I feel confident stating this without citation. Most teenagers do not feel compelled to and then follow through on killing their peers.
In fact, you'll find that most humans don't commit murder in general. It's not usually gonna be a great tool for you.
Yeah, I think that's another thing that the chapter 3 really hammered home, is murder even the right tool to solve this problem? I think it shows Keiichi reaching to it out of desperation, but then it asks, is this really the way to solve the problem that he wanted? Yep. Is this really a solution he wanted? Or that everyone wanted? But we're past talking about that now. I ain't got time for that. We're in the fun section. Give me more fun questions.
So, follow-up from Lady Burncastle on Discord.
Yo.
Is there either a serious idea from the characters that you think is silly, or an intentionally silly theory that you made that you maybe would like to turn out to be either plot relevant or actually true.
Trans Rena theory. It's coming back. Trans Rena theory stocks are rising. No. It's been a long while, so I don't know that I have anything fresh in my mind at the moment, but silly stuff that I wish was true. It would be really funny if Rena Satoshi theory did turn out to be true.
That would rule, yeah.
That would be really cool. I don't think it is, but if it did, it would be so it would be so funny. I wish. I don't know that I have a good answer to this question. I'm sorry. It's just I feel like I don't I don't want to disavow the value of asking a question like that, but I also feel like I don't have much else to add on what my current theories are or what I believe or don't believe. Does that make sense?
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, okay.
I suppose.
Thank you for asking. It is a reasonable question. I just don't have anything else to add.
I suppose my two, insofar as I get an answer here, given
No,
that
you
I
get an
already know
answer.
what happens, but I, for one, I'd love to meet Oyashiro-sama. Seems like a pretty cool guy. Like, oh, we were eating humans and so on, but like, yeah, we made up with the town. Now I'm gonna protect them. That's fine. I'm the town god now. Like, sure, yeah,
All right, whatever.
yeah. Let's meet Oyashiro-sama.
No. This is RO7 work. If Oyashiro-sama exists, she is a tiny girl.
Fair enough. I think that does fit with the general milieu of
What? A man? But wouldn't it be cuter if she was a girl instead? What was that from? That was from the whole Flowros bit, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Then I think my second one is I'd love it if one or more of your theories that you're making turns out to be correct, but for reasons that are completely unrelated to the reasons you're saying.
That would be great.
Where if we had one or more things that you vibe checked correctly and every bit of your reasoning to get there was flat wrong, I think that'd be wonderful.
That would be the best. You could tell me right now if that was the case.
I can't.
Why not?
Because then then you'd know.
Oh, okay, fair enough. But yeah, if there's something that just like got completely vibes based, but I'm reasoning that would be great.
I feel like
see.
Of the two of us, of the duo, you're the one that's better at the narrative arc based vibe checks. So like, if
I don't
it's
know
gonna
what
happen,
that says about me. I like to play at being like a hard mystery solver, but then so many of my little bits and bops come back to like, this would make a lot of narrative sense based on like the arc of how you tell a story if this stuff came back to be true. And here is some supporting reason that's ex post facto added on, but like the reason we got here in the first point was, vibes based. I'm not going to pretend I don't do that. I'm absolutely guilty of that.
There's a certain level of metatextual detective thinking and knowledge that you get from reading a lot of stories, writing a lot of stories, editing them, and understanding what makes a story tick. And like, what would have to be the case for this story to be one that people love in the way they do. So I think these kind of narrative arc based vibe checks are valid.
I think that's one of the things that is useful is that it is at the end of the day a story. In stories, we tell whether by necessity or convention have certain things they must fulfill in order to be a satisfying story. Man, using that knowledge does feel like cheating, but also get good. Get on my level.
Alrighty, one last question in the fun stuff section.
Yeah!
Artificial Devil from Discord asks, for both of you, have favorite character ratings changed at all after this arc?
Satoko is still Wooby. I want her to be happy so bad. I don't care whatever she's done in the past or whatever. I just want her to be happy. God. Aside from her though, Miyo continues to be my favorite asshole. However, Dark Horse Shion. Dark Horse Shion has definitely been coming up. I can. She seems like she's a really shitty person, but for complicated reasons, and I appreciate that. I can appreciate that. That seems like a character that I'm all about to. I can 100% get behind. I want to learn the complicated reasons why she's a shitty person.
That's valid. Well, we'll get a chance to, just not in the next chapter.
No, I'm sure when we get to the Shion chapters. Does she take over? Maybe she takes over for the entire answer arcs. Who knows?
Yeah. What if this is just the Shion series from here on out?
Wow,
it could be.
That'd be so cool.
Fan favorite Shion gets all the
Shion.
remaining spotlight.
Good golly.
I think for me, my favorites haven't changed at all, but my ratings of a couple of other characters have.
Oh,
so Keiichi has risen in my estimation a bit, seeing how he's written in this arc, especially that 1500 seconds, the snap, where he's just going into cold-blooded killer mode and all of that.
Yep.
And like that kind of internal richness wasn't there in the anime in this arc because it's hard to convey that kind of thing visually.
That's right, you're coming from the anime.
Textually, you can. And, that makes me think he's a little cooler. I think that I enjoyed his character a little more in this than I expected to.
Yeah, not that you agree with him, but that he's definitely a much richer character. Yeah.
Whereas a lot of it, like in the anime, one could have come out of it thinking like, oh, chapter 1, Keiichi snaps and kills people. Chapter 3, Keiichi snaps and kills people. More of the same. And like, this is a pretty
very
different version.
Yes.
So the other I'll say is that Coach has dropped from the bottom of my ranking to below the bottom of the ranking. He has dug through the bottomless pits and fallen into the magma of the Earth's core because the silky skin thing that keeps coming up just sets my teeth on edge. I just want the guy to stop talking.
Was he like this in the anime too?
He is still weird, yeah. But like it feels like
more so in this.
Yeah, and it also, it felt easier to overlook it in the anime where it's like, oh, anime trope, silly faces, people going super deformed and so on. This is obviously a comedy segment. But with this where it's just like keeps coming up the smooth, silky child skin, it's like,
give me smooth,
boy.
Give me silky.
Like, you should not be working in a medical clinic.
No.
Oh, no.
Well, screw that guy.
Did my opinions on anybody else change this time?
I have a controversial one.
Yeah?
My opinion of Oishi went up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How so?
In the sense that I like him more as a character now that kind of like after understanding getting closer to understanding his whole deal towards like chapter 2, where like what he is really committed to finding this out and isn't prepared to not find what he wants. I like how much of an absolute unabashed asshole he is. He is a cop, and he knows he's a cop. He's willing to throw around his weight in authority if it means he gets what he wants, and he's used to getting what he wants. And not used to having, like, say, Coach talk back to him on it and call him out explicitly for, like, hey, you can't do that to a student here, or, I'm welcome to talk to you if you come back with a warrant. I hate that Coach is, like, the most fucking anti-cop guy we've got. But
yeah, that's the thing that kills me about Coach. We've gotten so many really good, kind, sensible moments from this man trying to do the best he can in this crappy situation, and every single one of them is bookended with, by the way, the joke is pedophilia. And it's like, okay, so you built up a little goodwill and you lit it on fire. And you built up a little more goodwill and you lit it on fire.
And you've lit it on fire. Anyway, put Coach down the well. What year is this? 1983?
I forget.
Put Coach down the well, 83. Huh. Our numbers are low, but our conviction is strong.
So I got some things that I'd like to touch on a little more.
All right, the Vivian wrap-up section.
Yeah, so one thing I'm interested in is, where the heck is the body? What happened with that whole murder?
Yeah.
Like,
Where is the body?
Did Teppei die? If he did die, where's that body?
definitely
and who
died.
put it wherever it went?
He definitely died. My guess is that it's in the well. That would be my guess.
Good old Sonozaki well.
Yeah,
Slaps roof of well.
you can fit
fit
so many bodies in
many disappeared murder victims in this baby.
It's so convenient. It's right there. That's my guess, is that he's in the well. It seemed Shion really knew what was about to happen, and since it seems like everyone else in Keishi's friend group is in on the alibi part of it, it seems like Shion would have known enough to move it and put it in the body pit. Since it's clearly not there anymore, and he clearly killed a guy. Yeah. That's my answer. He is in the body pit.
And we conveniently never had any excuse for the police to discover its existence this time around, because everybody just died in a gas leak. So
yeah. So the body pit gets to stay. Well, we don't know what happens in the aftermath of that, but yeah, maybe it's just. I mean, my guess is that the government doesn't want people looking too closely into the stuff that happens there, because they're covering up the fact that this was their own chemical weapons that were deployed. So they have a reason, even if they find the body pit, to not have people look too closely at it.
Interesting. So now we're moving up a level in our conspiracy hierarchy to one where the Japanese federal government is covering something up here, and that's part of why stuff is weird.
They're covering up their own incompetence. Because what flies better? This was a natural, but unlikely, but still natural and inexplicable gas leak from volcanic gas pockets, or we let some kid get a hold of disused chemical weapons from World War II. Whoops. One of those has an inquiry attached to it, and one of them is just sad and a tragedy.
Oh, I've come up with the best name for your theory.
Yeah?
Gas leak gatekeep girl boss.
That's better! That's so much better!
Okay, so.
Oh, okay, I'm going with that from now on.
So.
Yo.
What do you think all that stuff about the perfect crime was about that came up this time? We suddenly had that mystery stuff come up, and that was not so much a element in previous
I
arcs.
think it informs how Keiichi thinks about it, but I think it more relevantly, that is a thematic reason for why it's important that humans never become involved in these killings. That's important. That's the key importance to why it has to be Oyashiro-sama's curse. Because if it's not, then there's a beginning. If it's not just the mystical god killing things, then there's a beginning. There is a crime to be investigated and solved. And that's not convenient for what the people who originally perpetrated the curse would want. I think we're meant to take that as like a look into the ethos of why the Oyashiro-sama lie came to be in the first place. Or why the idea of killing these people and then using the idea of Oyashiro-sama's curse as the cover came to be. Because this was their solution to how do we avoid a beginning. It wasn't people. It was a force of nature. It was a god. It was a literal vengeful god. Nothing to see here. Guess it's inevitable. Let's just move along. Yeah.
Fair enough. Here's something I'm interested in your thoughts on. We talked a fair bit about Coach. And why he might have died and what his role might be.
Yep.
I'm interested in one very specific thing.
Sure.
Do you remember the last time we see Coach alive?
The last time we see Coach alive is when Keiichi is leaving the clinic.
Yeah, when he's fleeing the clinic.
He picks you out in the hallway and sees him talking about preparing the sedative and the tea and calling for the police. Does he call for the police in that moment?
I don't think he did. I think that at that moment he was calling for his orderlies or whoever to get him restrained.
It seemed like he was preparing to take this to a next level. He wanted to sedate Keiichi, have his orderlies keep him down, and then we don't know what's going to happen after that. The next time we see him,
was up with that?
He's dead. That's a good question. Coach is still
Do you
the
think
big.
do you think it matters? Do you think it's an
I
important
think it
thing?
matters. I think it's important. I don't think it's shown for just shits and giggles. But that doesn't mean I have a better idea of what it means. I think some of it has to be tied into what Coach's actual motivations are. If he's actually a part of this new conspiracy, like that's doing the murders of this year, I think he's got some vested interest in making sure the story's going straight, because all of a sudden more bodies, right, that weren't accounted for. If he's working in the group along with Shion and Miyo in that group in like perpetuating this year's crimes, then another body is a rough thing to deal with, and maybe it doesn't fit into their plan. I don't know necessarily that he is against Keiichi, but it feels like he has to do something in that. Like, it feels like he has to have Keiichi quiet and moved somewhere, whether or not Keiichi wants to. I don't necessarily think that means that he's going to hurt Keiichi, but I think it means that he's made a decision. Like, if we're gonna get out of this with our story intact, we need him to be somewhere else for a little while until we can get him on page, on script. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And Keiichi doesn't seem in a spot to do that willingly at that moment. So, yeah, I don't have a better answer for you. That's where my thoughts are at. That I still don't have a good handle on what Coach's motivation is, and that's. I feel like we haven't really gotten it. I don't feel like I've missed anything specifically relating to Coach, but I just feel like we haven't been given a lot.
Yeah, it's pretty much just been it's literally just been this chapter pretty much where we've been digging into this guy and who he is. He's a very new character to us, so I don't think you've been.
He's also
missing much.
He's he might be the director.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe he's the director. Or no, or the director, Shion, and the director. Whatever, I don't give a shit. What else you got for me?
Why the hecky did Rika die? What happened there? This feels like the thing that is least tied into or explained by anything we've discussed so far.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like Rika seems to have a better handle of what's going on than she lets on. Like, it seems like she's ready to murk Shion in chapter 2 there, right? It feels like, regardless of what she shows to Keiichi, Rika has some knowledge and capability of what's going on beyond what she's willing to share. And it seems like she might have gotten too close to something in this chapter and wound up killed and left as a message or something. I don't know why her body was shown in that way. If it was just coincidence that that's where she died, or she was purposely displayed in that manner. My guess, since my operating theory relies on Rena being the operating, like the lever puller in this chapter, she might have tried to confront Rena. The idea of Rika having more knowledge than she's actually able to act upon is also really interesting, because she is still just a kid. Right? She's still a tiny kid, so even if she has some like more maturity and more knowledge of what's going on, she's held back by the fact that she is in a small child's body.
Yeah, it's like, even if Rika knew exactly what was going to happen down to the finest detail, what could she do?
Exactly. What could she do to change it? And I do it does seem like from her actions she has more knowledge than she's sharing with the rest of her friends, and has the willingness to act upon them. And my guess is that her dying and like her death in that was a response to that. She tried to take matters into her own hands again and was killed for it.
Whoops.
Yeah.
We have seen her get into fights off camera at least once.
Exactly.
So it's not out of the realm of possibility.
And we saw her ready to stab with a needle full of chemical. So yeah. That's just her insulin. What am I saying?
Yeah, I was about to say, in before the twist is just that Rika is diabetic, and that's the only reason there are needles floating around this story at all.
Oh, I could see it happening at some point. It's a good twist.
So, another thing I'm curious about. How many conspiracies do we think are going on at this point?
That's a great question.
To me, it feels like we've got at least 4. We've got the original killing stuff. Then we've got the Satoshi is Keiichi thing.
Yep.
Then we've got whatever's going on with these current killings thing.
Yep.
Then we've got the Japanese government itself covering up a chemical weapons thing.
Yep. So I think the Japanese government covering up, that's a situational one. I don't think that's going to be present in every version of events.
Yeah, even so. Like
Yeah.
how full conspiracy are we going? How
Here's
many
the
are
thing
going
is that
on
I think it's easy, like, we say full conspiracy, but it's just people and their own objectives. I feel like the word conspiracy in this case kind of takes away the agency in that these are people doing things for reasons that are sensible to them.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just covering up for the sake of covering up. It's people doing what they think they need to with the information they have. With that in mind, I think like there's the initial group of people hiding the secret of the original Oishiro-sama killings, which I think goes up through Rika's parents. There's the conspiracy around Satoshi killing his aunt, and then presumably as an extension of that, him also coming back as Keiichi Maibara. There's the conspiracy to continue the murders this year. And so that's like 3 different conspiracies all involved in the Oishiro-sama killings. But on top of that, there's also whatever the Sonozaka family is actually doing that is illegal and getting the cops interested in them.
Oh, yeah. So we've got that whole thing. Just a normal criminal conspiracy this time. Not the tinfoil hat kind of conspiracy theory conspiracy. The conspiracy as in criminal charge conspiracy.
Yeah, these are just Yakuza. I'm sure they've got their own stuff going on. And they have the ability to have the town under their thumb still, right? There's got to be a reason for that, I assume. We have whatever Miyo's actual motivations are. But I think that ties into the current conspiracy of for the killing for this year. We've got the group of Hinamizawa elders that seem to have their own motivations and decisions, right? They all meet at the town hall. The Sonozaki grandma seems to be there from time. Oryo seems to be there from time to time. It seems like that's a group of people who meet and have actions, even if we don't see any like physical results of that in like grand conspiracy ways. That's still a group of people meeting together and having a tangible impact on their community, one presumes. We have the police. That's another faction. And within the police themselves, we also have the sub-faction of Oishi and his conspiracy of going under the radar folks trying to look into the Sonozakis. And that's a completely separate faction. I think that's part of the point of Higurashi as a series is that it's hard. Like in real life, people aren't just divided into clean camps. Everyone has their own complicated set of motivations and needs and will work with people in the moment based on what will help them.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't really delineate real life into good guys, bad guys.
Yep.
There are groups of people who work together that have their own needs and motivations. And the ways in which they interact with each other are not binary.
They're non-binary.
There you go. And I do think that's genuinely part of part of what makes Higurashi work is that realization that it's not that they're all conspiracies, it's that they're all different factions or groups of people that have their own agenda. Some maybe with some bleed over between them, but like that doesn't have to be a conspiracy. That's just people. That sort of makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's how I feel about that.
All right. I will ask you a question you may be familiar with from last time,
okay.
Which is, what are you surprised I didn't ask you about?
Ooh.
The good old let's make you do my job for a bit thing, because I'm sure I forgot to ask about something important.
It's fair. It's valid. It's valid. It's a little bit skeevy, but it's valid. What am I surprised you didn't ask me about? Thing is, ask me again 20 minutes after we've stopped recording.
Okay, fair.
You know what I mean? That tends to be when stuff comes to me. What was I expecting to have to answer for that you didn't? You didn't ask me what I thought Miyo was doing that night.
Oh yeah, that is a great one. What was Miyo doing that night? What was going on there?
She was helping to stage Tomataki's murder.
Okay. I guess it makes sense.
Yeah, helping stage Tomataki's murder. I've already asserted that that's what her deal is, so that's not surprising.
Here's something, though.
Yep.
If you're helping stage a murder, why would you stop for a kid and do this whole other thing?
Because your
if you've got like a
co-collaborator
body in the trunk or
because your
something like
co-collaborator Shion is like, hey, I'm pretty sure this Keiichi kid isn't over his head. Could you just make sure he's doing all right out there?
Interesting.
The whole murdering, because we know. I have asserted that she is working with Shion on this, and if Shion is also the actionable person in getting the cover up for Keiichi's killing ready, it's not unreasonable for her to be like, hey, Miyo, while you're out there, could you just real quick? I think this guy is in over his head and might need a ride or something.
While you're busy dealing with this one murder, can you real quick help with this second one? Just,
Yeah.
while you're at the murder store.
While you're at the murder store.
Can you pick me up another perfect crime?
Exactly. And I think that's also why, like, she's, like, very much alluding to the fact that she knows Keiichi killed someone, but also doesn't do anything about it.
I love that scene where it's like both of us are acting really sus.
But neither of us are going to say anything.
Not going to say anything about it to each other, but are definitely going to imply it to each other in a really sus way.
It's great. It's a really good scene.
Two people who have definitely done nothing illegal this night and have every reason in the world to be found right here at this place and time.
Yep.
And there's no reason to find that suspicious or strange.
Yep. You didn't ask me what I thought happened to Satoko at the end there.
Wait, at the end.
She pushes Keiichi off, Keiichi lives, and she dies somehow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, what happens with that?
I don't know. I don't remember if she dies or goes missing, but I don't know in her position what I would do with that.
Do you want me to look it up?
Nah,
if she dies or goes missing?
It's fine. Ultimately, the question is, like, what would you do in her situation? Would I try to who would I try to find in that moment, or would I just try to run? Either way, the outcome seems the same. I guess if she's missing, then there's the possibility she shows up later in the future. If her body wasn't found. But I don't know.
Chie Sensei swoops in and spirits her away to somewhere with less child abuse.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know in that situation who I would turn to if I were her.
Interestingly, yes, Satoko goes missing. She is not confirmed dead.
Satoko goes missing. Okay, so she's probably enough on the outskirts of town that she probably just runs. She probably doesn't know what else to do at that point because she probably thinks she just killed Keiichi. And she doesn't have any clothes on and doesn't know, like, she is in the worst of situations right now. But she's also away from the center of town since we know Keiichi doesn't get hit by the gas leak. So I'm guessing she just runs, and whether or not she dies or lives is up in the air. But yeah, that's probably what happens with her.
Speaking of people going missing.
Yep.
What do you think's up with the cops going missing? It seems awfully convenient that Oishi and Kuma-chan
I was
specifically go missing. Those specific two officers.
I couldn't tell if it was just those specific two and that was it, or if those two because they were the named characters.
That's a good point.
Like, if it's just those two because they're the named characters and we want to know, and like also other cops might have died, that's one thing. But if it's just... because it wouldn't make sense if it was just those two, because there was other people involved in their conspiracy. Right? There was much other people involved in the Mahjong club. I still don't know what to make of it, because it implies that they were in Hinamizawa at the time. We know they had been harassing Keiichi about digging up the body and didn't find anything. Do we know where they were after that point? Did we see them at the... we didn't see Oishi or Kuma. We didn't see the two of them at the clinic, right? Those were just random cops.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so they weren't at the clinic. I have to wonder if they were maybe taking the opportunity to try to move in on the Sonozakis? Yeah, I don't really know. Their movements aren't accounted for, but apparently they were in Hinamizawa. And the only reason I could think of them for them to hang around is if they were trying to make a move on their target now. Other things I'm surprised you didn't ask me about. I don't know. I think that's about it for things that I
Okay.
expected you to ask me about.
I did better this time.
You did.
And by I mean really the viewers, because 99% of all the things that I wanted to ask about, somebody else already said, which is great.
How
because that
convenient.
just saves me so much work, really.
Right?
I can just ask their question and then jump in with pointless nitpicking details if there's more stuff I want to know.
You can ask their question and take credit for it.
Yeah,
That's so nice of
it's
you.
great. So thank you for making my job easy, everyone. I guess one last thing I'll ask is,
Sure.
Separate from prying you for answers about things and all of that, is there anything you wish you had the chance to talk about here and you hadn't got a chance yet? Any final parting words or anything that stood out as particularly awesome or
I feel like
weird
I feel like I wheedled my way into talking about everything I wanted to. I found a reason to bring up almost everything. Is there anything else I want to hit on before we close the book on chapter 3 for now? Actually, yeah. I feel like Tomatake as a character needs a bit more love. It feels like after his initial scene, his purpose is to spout exposition and die. But clearly he's had more to contribute to the community than that, right? They talk about how he's been flirting with one of them, with Miyo at the clinic. It seems like they've been going steady for a while. He's clearly been involved in the town for much longer than that. But we don't know what he's been doing for the town other than showing up and taking pictures. He's not a person. He has no legal identity. That's weird. And there's so many questions about him left up in the air, but we don't get to know the answer to him yet because he just spouts exposition and dies.
I wonder if we ever will.
Yeah, I feel like we're definitely due some answers on Tomatake. That's one of the big things I feel like we're missing at this point. But yeah, that's the big thing I wanted to get off my chest.
All right.
Satoko still gets one free kill.
Yep, and she took the chance here.
Took
it didn't
the chance.
quite work, but
you know what? She again. I maintain that Satoko Hojo hasn't done nothing wrong.
So, want to wrap up with some poetry?
Yes.
Let's
yes, I do.
Let's revisit Frederica Berncastle's poem. This is something we didn't do the previous 2 times.
Okay.
But I think it's fun now that I realized, I can just go find them.
Yeah.
And it's been a long time since we saw the first episode that had it or whatever. So
Yeah,
here was the poem for this time.
For episode 3.
Yeah, for chapter 3. The frog in the well was happy because he wasn't interested in the outside world. The frog in the well was happy because he didn't have anything to do with the outside world. And you were happy too because you didn't know what happened outside the well.
That feels like it's talking about Keiichi's ignorance of what's going on around him. Keiichi is happier because he's not involved in what's going on around him.
As soon as he learns what's really going on in his friends' lives, it's like, oh, fuck.
Yes.
Oh, no.
Yeah, exactly. As soon as he learns what is happening in the lives of those around him, immediate protagonist syndrome kicks in. That really feels like that's about Keiichi. But written by Frederica Berncastle. If that's not Rika rating that, then it's someone provocatively taking Rika's name. So, I wonder who's writing that and why.
Yeah. Anyway, I haven't got much else.
No, I feel like feel like we did this one pretty tidy, actually.
Yeah.
And I know sometimes we like to run long, but this one we got clean, 2.5 hours. I feel like that's a good episode.
Alrighty.
Good discussion episode. Some cleanup stuff here. I don't know if this is going live before or after, but obviously we've got another series in the interim. Then we're going to come back and play Arc 4. After we play Arc 4, we will do the talk back, but then there is going to be an extended break from Higurashi.
Yep.
We've got a couple of games we were lined up to play in the middle there. Some that people have been asking us for a couple times on the Discord, so we're happy to get to those.
I can't wait to find out what they are.
The idea, right? The idea is that we'll do our general episode 4 talkback, then we'll take a break for a while. During that break, I'm going to go back and rewatch all of the question arcs, and then we'll do another big question arcs discussion session before we hop in and do the answer arcs. So please look forward to that. I know we kind of take things at a snail's pace here on 8PR, but I feel like that enables us to give a better quality of discussion and playthrough, and I hope that shows. Thank you all for listening.
Thanks,
it means
indeed.
a lot that you enable our weird book club bullshit.
Thanks for asking questions.
Thanks for asking
making
questions.
us think.
It made Vivian's job easier. It meant I could pay more attention to the throbbing pain in my ear. It's actually not that bad. It's perfectly fine. It's just funnier if I say it that way. I'm going to go take a lozenge now because my throat hurts. Bye, everyone.
Me too. Peace, y'all.
Smash that like, comment and subscribe.
How about some Umineko related questions?
All right, this is the Umineko spoilery section. So during this section, we will be talking about and using explicit knowledge of things that we learned by playing Umineko. If you have not watched our playthrough of Umineko yet, go ahead and do so right now. Just take a moment, quick pause, and just quickly watch through the entire series. Then you'll have enough context for the discussion happening here.
See you in a year when you've achieved love.
This shouldn't be too long. Just take like a quick minute or two. We'll see you in a moment. For everyone else, what do we got?
Volition from Discord asks, what are your impressions of the Great Hinamizawa Disaster compared to the Rokenjima incident and how they serve their respective narratives / mysteries?
That's interesting because knowing that this one happens first, I can't help but feel like the Great Rokenjima Disaster is in some ways a response to the Hinamizawa Disaster. I don't remember when specifically episode 1. I think that the key difference is the Great Rokenjima Disaster is baked into the story of Umineko from chapter 1.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't think anything necessarily implies or necessitates the existence of the Great Hinamizawa Disaster in episode 1 of Higurashi. Unless I'm completely wrong about that, I don't think anything necessarily... Because, like, it doesn't happen by the end of the story. Rena's dead, so I don't think anyone's left to do it. Doesn't to say, like, the bits of there don't exist, but they don't seem to have much of a play on the story itself. And as we saw in Chapter 2, it just doesn't happen. So I don't know how one would derive the existence of it in the plot based on that. That said, so I don't even know temporally if episode 1 of Umineko came out before or after episode 3 of Higurashi. I assume after. Because episode 3 of Higurashi would have been... Umineko started in, like, 06, 07, right? I assume episode 3 of Higurashi was before then. But it does feel like that's a bit of a response to the Great Hinamizawa Disaster. A way of kind of, like, wiping the map clean, and then, by virtue of that, allowing any number of stories to take place in its wake.
I regret to inform you, I've just reset all the thoughts in my brain because I forgot that I just got a nose piercing this morning.
And
I tried to scratch my nose.
How'd that go?
My eye is watering a little.
Do you want us to pause, or are you going to power through? Okay,
we're good.
See, that's what you got to do. Where I do, I got a rook piercing on one of my ears, which is out of the way, so I'm never going to touch it. But it goes well with the tragus piercing in that ear. There's your little bit of eskay lore. I've got 2 piercings in my left ear. One is on the tragus. One is a rook piercing. Moving along.
Yeah, what were we talking about?
I do feel like there's a similar way of, like, by wiping all evidence off the map, it allows for any number of stories to take place, each of which are equally valid. And in that kind of open-endedness invites a manner of speculation from outside people. Like, they see this human tragedy and take it as because of the lack of information, take it as an invitation to then speculate on what really happened. Such as in the case of the journalist that corners Keiichi. And he says, like, hey, I don't think the volcanic gas could have really worked that way. I think maybe one of you's telling a fib. It's a little bit less dramatic than it is in Umineko, where, like, the whole true crime podcaster is the fucking curve of the arc, right? Like, that all of it turns on the public's inability to, let human tragedies be tragedies and instead try to make up their own explanations for them or feel invited to do so.
Yep.
Despite the fact that this is still people's lived experiences and tragedies. That might still be the case in Higurashi, but I think maybe it's going to turn more on like that'll turn less on the Great Hinamizawa Disaster and more on Miyo's use of the town's history for her own ends. Whatever those ends may be. Did that answer the question? I felt like I feel like I answered it somewhere in there.
Yeah. From my perspective,
yeah.
I guess first thing, do you remember when in Umineko it became clear what the disaster was? It wasn't really until Angie's visit to Rokkenjima, right? That we
where it
realized
becomes very clear that
the mansion isn't there anymore for some reason.
Right, and then when you have to like confront that, like there are some it obviously still existed. Like if you read between the lines, I think even when we were reading chapter 1, I was speculating what kind of disaster would have left those specific remains for Maria.
Yeah, you did.
Right. And because like obviously chapter 1 is written by Sayo, and Sayo knows about that and knows that's what. And same in chapter 2, like that's what the great mass of goats is meant to represent, is the inevitable explosion. But I don't think it became so clear that you could no longer avoid it until like Angie visited and was like, "Oh, it's not on the map anymore. It's completely blown away." And I don't think it's made made explicit until later. But at that point, I think you have enough to figure it out.
Yep.
Because it's made very explicit later when Beatrice explains like how the clock works, right?
Yep.
And like once they make it clear, oh, like this was a military base. I've taken all of it, put it here, and this is how it works.
This is something kind of different between the two then, where in the case of Umineko, the fact that there is a huge disaster that killed everyone in one fell swoop is hidden from us.
Yeah.
We believe that it's a mysterious series of mystical witch killings and so on until we discover the truth that it's a fucking bomb. Whereas here... Right. We're suddenly getting it right up front. By the way, there's some sort of massive event that will wipe out the town. Sometimes. Maybe not always.
Yeah,
but there's something that can and will kill every single person here.
Yeah.
And that's something which Umineko very much doesn't put in your face to begin with, and which Higurashi very much does. By the way, someone or something has the power to wipe this town off the map at any time, and sometimes they're going to do that.
Yeah, like this is a conditional thing that can't happen. It's so strange in that way that it like, because that means it can't operate in the same way as it does in Umineko. It's no longer licensed to speculate, except in that one timeline or loop or whatever you want to call it. And obviously knowing about how it's used in Umineko kind of colors my ideas for how it's used in Higurashi. But, and obviously like that's also part of why I'm so ready to tie it back to like old military base.
Yep.
Right. And like I didn't want to say that during that first part, but that's part of why I'm so gung ho about that.
You already know that he's willing to go there.
Right. And that's something that RO7 likes to hit upon because it's very relevant. Like it's like, oh, we'll spend money on this, but then turn a blind eye as, after it's only like normal citizens now. It's like, but yeah, that's part of why I'm gung ho about that. Yeah, it can't help but feel similar, but I feel like it's definitely different. It doesn't feel inevitable. The inevitability of it is not what's hanging over the entire situation, shrouding it in mystery. It is just one among a series of potentialities in the, or at least that's what it seems to be. Maybe it truly does happen in the other timelines for some reason. It doesn't seem like it does, but maybe. Who knows? I don't think so. I think we pretty definitively see that it doesn't happen in chapter 4. Anyway, what else we got?
We have only one more Umineko related question. This one is from Cat Minister on Discord.
Okay. Cat Minister, huh?
Yeah.
Nice.
knowing how Umineko paced its chapters and what's that entailed for each one, what do you expect to find in the upcoming chapters with what you've been given so far?
Yeah.
And are there any other interesting parallels you're finding?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting. We talked about this already during the non-spoiler section. It's interesting that R07 seemed ready to cut and run here at chapter 3.
Yeah.
It seemed like maybe and maybe the necessitation of a chapter 4 kind of colored how Umineko was going to go. I feel like Umineko needed that space. Like, you can argue whether or not Umineko's overwrought. I feel like each of the individual arcs does bring its own thing to the table that is necessary and wouldn't sit alongside something else. So I feel like that's why I also feel so confident being like this, like whether or not what we find out in chapter 4 is, still considered a question arc. It seems clear that this was meant to be enough. I don't know that R07 meant this to be a mystery in the way that Umineko is and that you were meant to solve it. But I think I think there was meant to be enough through chapter 3 that the explanations would feel satisfying and tie stuff together.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not enough for you to solve it, but enough for everything to feel enough to foreshadow everything that was coming.
Yep. I think that's a good way to think about it this time, rather than the question arcs being like, here is enough info for you, the reader who is the detective, to solve everything that is going on, which it feels like, that might be a way to think about it for Umineko. I think for Higurashi, it's very much not that. And it's very much, here is where we are done asking the questions, where we are done setting up everything,
right?
All of the pieces that are gonna start falling together, so that you can feel like this is the turning point where you've got everything in your head, and it'll start feeling like the answers are satisfying for you.
Exactly. Which
this
makes
point
the existence of this fourth arc super strange. Like, I know why it exists. I know the circumstances behind it. But it also feels like we just reached a crescendo, but also now we need to keep going. like clearly the music was written to hit a swell right here, but then but also we're getting louder again. I don't necessarily think that's going to mean it's bad or forced or awkward or anything. Judging from people's reactions, it seems like it's still good. But it is interesting that this felt like this was meant to be the turning point. And given that whole buildup in the credit sequence and stuff, and given how short EP4 turned out to be, that seems pretty easy to say. So I guess the question is then, what else could R07 give us before the turning point,
or even after? This was meant
to
pretty
be
general question about the upcoming chapters. It did ask about the last question arc, but as well about the upcoming chapters. So
I still think it's weird that Rika wasn't originally a question arc receiving character.
Yeah,
that's fascinating to me. Which seems to imply that her role in this is different than that of her clubmates, no matter the fact that she seems to get one now. I also think that one of the things that characterized the Umineko question answer arcs was that we kind of the serial narrative kept happening, but our main focus shifted from the murders to Angie investigating them in the future. So I think the answer arcs, I mean, we already know they're going to come with a very big change of perspective, right? They're going to come with a change to Shion's perspective. But I wonder if at the same time it's not just a change to Shion's perspective, but it's going to be Shion in the future. Right? Like maybe it's not going to just be Shion's perspective on these events, but Shion is now our vehicle for looking at this story with the perspective of the future. Which is interesting because it implies that Shion has to survive if that's the case, but or Shion pretending to be Miyo or any of that gymnastics. I think it'll end up being Shion because I don't think R07 would lie about Shion being the viewpoint character and then she's not the viewpoint character. I think that there would be a level of honesty in that if we're stepping into Shion's shoes, we'll know when she's pretending to be Miyo by virtue of fate. Like, I'm pretending to be Miyo now.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. Yes. If so, if we're getting honesty, authorial honesty here, and like a reliable peek into Shion's mind.
Or
what
rather-
does it mean when she's trying to be somebody else? What's that
Right.
like?
Right, exactly. I don't necessarily think it's going to be honesty. I think it's I think what it'll be is like we are going to be authentically Shion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's going to be like the fact that Keiichi seems to lie to himself at
Mhm.
times. I'm not saying that Shion can't do that. I'm saying that this will be Shion's internality, whatever that looks like. But also make an interesting parallel if Keiichi is actually someone else, is actually Satoshi, but is Keiichi, then Shion is actually Shion, but pretending to be Miyo. A lot of little parallels there. That's fun. I like parallels. They go next to each other and look the same, and that's pleasing. I imagine that if we do shift perspective to the future, there's going to be a little bit more about like the fallout of these incidents. If the Great Hinamizawa Disaster is the history that's written, then I imagine we'll see a lot more talking about like what led up to it, speculation around it, and stuff like that. Not in like the true crime arc of it, but in more that like the how do I explain this? More in the sense that people are going to be looking at the motivations of the characters in play more deeply. Like, I don't know if that's a distinction without a difference. Again, I think it's helpful not to see it as a mystery to be solved, but more like we're having the dominoes all fall together now. So I think we're going to start seeing events and things that make sense or only make sense under certain interpretations. I don't know whether or not RO7 is going to be explicit about it or just trust the reader to be like, oh, if this is happening, that means this has to have happened. But yeah, I expect I do think there's still going to be new things to think about because obviously, but I do think it's going to be downhill from here, if that makes sense. Like we're going to start coasting.
All right.
Any other Umineko spoiler questions you want to ask me since we're in this section?
I don't think I have any. I don't think any leapt to mind for me.
Shit, I feel like I didn't really make use of the Umineko spoilery section this time.
Yeah, I feel like we were really light on it this time.
That's fine. I feel like there's a lot more to go in last time, and it's not always going to be a lot. I feel like I've already been upfront about the ways in which reading Umineko has shaped my patterns of thought,
Mm-hmm.
and that doesn't necessitate a spoiler tag. You know what I mean? That's just how the ways in which I'm thinking. But, there we go. Well, you watched to the end of it, so I feel like I should give you something here for watching to the end of it.
Wait, to the end of what?
Well, this is going to go at the end of the video.
Oh, but we didn't get to...
We didn't, but this part, the Umineko
okay.
part's going to get cut,
Oh, sorry.
right?
Okay.
So this is
I'm
now
sorry
at
for
the-
interrupting.
No, it's fine. You can interrupt.
Interrupting Vivian.
If you made it this far, thanks.
I feel like I killed your momentum and took this to a really weird place.